What's up, everybody? Jody here with the Bass Nerds. I just want to give you a brief introduction into this episode of the podcast. Typically, Mark and I like to keep things really lighthearted, fun, inviting musicians and builders to discuss stuff about bass and tell fun stories and have a good time. But this episode's a little different, and we get into some deep subjects and some darker stuff. So, in our current social, economic, political climate, there's been a lot of protests and rioting and Black Lives Matter movements happening all across the United States, somewhat even across the world. And Mark and I wanted to offer a platform to some people of color to kind of share their experiences as being a musician and being a person of color. Mark and I, are white guys, don't feel quite equipped to share those stories or experiences. So we welcome three people to the podcast, two of which have been previously on the podcast, Jauqo and Vuyani. And then a third player, Will Howard, who does a ton of gigging in Chicago, and we'll get into, if you listen to the podcast, get into some of the other things he does. But these are three people of color who've been playing bass and been musicians for decades and kind of wanted to share their experiences with us and with you, the viewer, listener. Our original intent in this episode of the podcast was basically as a person of color, what has your experience been as a musician, and how has that differed? Do you believe that differs from your white counterparts? The conversation in this podcast ranges from that to overall what it is to be black in America. It's kind of hard to separate those two things and just focus on being a musician when there's a lot of other things that it spreads out to. So, just wanted to give you guys a heads up that this podcast is a little different than any episode we've done previously. I think I speak for Mark and myself that we were really happy with the discussion that came out of this podcast, and we were, more than what we expected to accomplish. And, I really want to thank Jauqo, Will, and Vuyani for coming on and sharing their experiences. And I hope you learned something. I definitely learned something in these podcasts, and I hope you like it. If you want to just keep it lighthearted and fun, maybe you want to skip this episode, but I think you'll enjoy it. So thanks so much for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, all those fun things. And yeah, take a listen. Welcome to another episode of the Bass Nerd. I'm Jody, and this is Mark. And today we have a full house. Some people you might recognize from previous podcasts. We'll start over here with Mr. Jauqo III X, a designer of multiple sub-contrabasses and multi-string instruments and the low C sharp theory.
I'm smiling under here.
He's smiling under there.
What's funny is that we could see Will is smiling because he's got this weird hole right here. And he looks like a cartoon.
Because I have a very large head.
But I'm being triggered by these masks from a previous lifestyle.
And also, Jauqo's got a new signature bass out from Clover that you may see a demo in the near future from me on that bass coming soon.
I don't know if the microphone can hear me winking, but
Hear you winking?
I'm winking.
He's winking. We got Mr. Will Howard over here in the far corner. According to Bass Musician Magazine, maybe one of the hardest working bass players in Chicago. This is what they say.
Used to be.
COVID-19 was the only thing that could stop him.
That was pre-COVID. But,
Will is well known for doing a lot of gigs in Chicago corporate, just jams. Also running the Chicago Bass Player magazine, Bass Player Facebook page.
It's a magazine now.
Not the magazine, but the Chicago Bass Players Facebook page, which is very active, and everybody chats on there. And just an ambassador to basses, bass ambassador, bass ambassador.
A real bass nerd.
Right.
And then finally over here we got Mr. Vuyani Wakaba, also a Chicago, hardest working Chicago bass player here, who is also a contributor to Bass Musician magazine. Is that correct?
No trouble.
No Trouble. You just recently became what's the official title at No Trouble? I saw Corey talking about this.
Yeah, I joined their new board.
Nice. And hails all the way from South Africa.
Yes, sir.
So, we're international here.
Wait, we're from the IIIX.
Well, and me and Will are
We're
from Chicago Heights. So
we're international anyway.
Right. We
it's a whole
have a
other
bond. Since before we actually knew each other,
Right.
we had a bond with each other.
Right.
So today's episode of the Bass Nerds is probably going to be a little different than I think normal. There's the current socio-economic climate, a lot of Black Lives Matter protests going on, a lot of racial tensions in the world today, and Mark and I wanted to get some other perspectives and provide a platform for these three gentlemen here who represent a lot of Black culture in the Chicago music scene, I guess, would be an appropriate way to say it.
That's a hell of a load you got
That's a
there.
whole
You
responsibility.
represent all,
Divide it up.
but certainly more than Mark and I do, right? Like,
Oh, most
That was like
definitely.
the
Most
podcast
definitely.
version of saying like we've got black friends.
well, I like to think they're my friends. They're Black. Does that count? I
Let
don't
me
know.
get your ass whooped, Jody.
You might be safe during the revolution. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is such a giant topic. It's such a, music is such a racial history in it. I mean, Elvis was stealing Black music. A lot of people were repurposing Black music and calling it their own. And in addition to being session and gigging players, and we just want to get some of your feedback and experiences and see what you have to say about the current situation, because I'm a white guy. I don't feel like I can accurately represent that. So I don't know where to. Do you have a?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, as Jody pointed out, this is it's not a new topic.
Right.
The unrest, the tension. It's just that with current events, it's just enough is enough, and we can do all of the historical studies in the world. We can engage in the communities. We can Google that shit.
Sure.
Right.
But it's just important for Black musicians to control the narrative of the Black experience as a musician. And I think that's kind of the whole point of today. I mean, Jody and I can't really explain that to people because it's just not authentic. This is
Right.
all it comes down to. So we thought it's really important for us to just sit back and we're just going to shut the fuck up. We might ask a few questions and everything to help the conversation flow and ask legitimate questions.
Yeah, we already started chatting before we pressed the record button and kind of were like, we got to pause. Let's put this on the table. I don't know, where did we leave off before we walked into this room? Does anybody remember?
Well, can I suggest that we actually go back to a period before we all were alive and just acknowledge the fact that musicians typically were the ones who were most welcoming of virtually everybody that was a musician. If you look at integration in the United States, it really started with musicians. Mm-hmm. And even though that integration started with musicians, it didn't mean that issues of race were overcome among the community of musicians. It just meant that there were musicians who worked closely together from different races who recognized that they were no different than each other and wanted the same things, and therefore it was not cool for them to go in the front door while their other bandmates have to come in through the back door. So at least we have to give that acknowledgement, I believe, that there are musicians who actually have been great at doing something. But now what we're really still trying to address are the musicians and members of our community that still refuse to be progressive and inclusive. And that's where we're still having issues as not just as black musicians, just as black people, period. And so that to me is, I think, a good place to start.
Okay, so earlier you were talking about being part of the builders.
Yes.
That was one of the topics of conversation we had out in the hallway.
Yes.
It came up recently. Somebody on a Facebook thread was asking about, hey, I'd like to support black builders, be it luthiers, be it pedal companies, amp companies, et cetera, et cetera. Where do I find those? And what was what was the general vibe of that thread? And then where did that kind of put you guys? Where did that take you?
Well, I guess I kind of was the main person sitting here right now who, although Jauqo contributed to it. Basically, that's right. I can cuss, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, you say whatever you want.
Shit, fuck.
Right.
Yeah.
So it became a shitstorm very quickly because I saw the post last night, and it's a legitimate question. And the funny thing about it is that I saw the post, and I was like, "Oh, let me think beyond the 2 or 3 people, beyond the one person that I deal with directly, which is Mike D. Griffin from Essential Sound Products, who we all have a relationship with. That's the one black owner that I deal with directly. I endorse his product. He's a great guy. He's been really good to me. Then I started, and it was Andrew Taylor Cummings from England, who's a great up-and-coming luthier.
He's not up and coming. Man.
Well, yeah, he's up, he's here.
around.
Right.
But I mean, up and coming as far as
top
like
of the food
notoriety
Yeah,
sure.
and getting out there,
Okay.
like his products are getting
Yeah.
out there, and more people are knowing about it. And then Mark Singleton, I think was the guy's.
Yeah.
And I've seen his work, but I know he makes a lot of guitars too. But
yeah.
it's Scott Ambush.
Right.
Then
David Manyweather.
David
Who's
Manyweather,
no
who's
longer
no longer
with
with
us.
us.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and that's
it.
that's
Right.
5 people, 1 who's dead. So, but the response to the question is what got me. It became a shitstorm because the first thing that many of the white people who were on they were like, well, that's a racist question. It's completely racist. Color doesn't matter. Who cares what color is the person who makes something is? It's racist for you to want to buy something from a black person. And it's also racist for you to ask the question. You're a racist, Mr. Black Man. And I'm like, and I always use this analogy that I heard somewhere about there are 2 fish in the ocean and they're swimming and one fish turns to the other fish. And of course we have talking fish, but one fish turns to the other fish and he says, man, the water sure is cold today. And the other fish looks at him and goes, what water? If you've never been outside of an environment where you're at an advantage, you don't realize that other people aren't.
Right.
You think, and I'm actually fascinated by that mindset because I'm like, so fuck slavery, Jim Crow for 75 years, civil unrest, people marching in the street. You're seeing all of this because I'm seeing all of this. You're seeing all of this and you're just going, I don't know why these people, what's their problem? There's nothing wrong with the world. Everybody has the same opportunity. What's wrong? It's like at this point in the information age when, this thing right here can tell you everything you need to know in 10 seconds.
Right.
Why do you, it's willful cognitive dissonance. I'm ignoring it because, and then there's this idea that racism will go away if black people simply stop talking about it.
So expounding on what you're saying, I think white, general white people probably if I'm not, generic white guy, I'm not racist, right? And I don't, no one in my immediate circle is racist. I don't see that. Like you said, what water, right? So then I go like, well, there is no racism. I don't see it. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? So then like having the black experience is something that like, how am I going to know that's a thing if it's not in my immediate circle, if it's not something I'm exposed to? So I like.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Have you ever wondered why there's so much racism and violence in the black community?
Well, so yes, I can say that.
Have you ever wondered why, if you drive, we're on the north side right now.
Right.
We're on Cicero. If you drive south and then a little bit east of that, you can drive down Ashland, Western, all of these streets in the black side of town, because we live in Chicago,
Right.
which is one of the most segregated cities in the United States that I've ever been to.
Agreed.
But have you ever wondered why there's no business there?
Well, I mean, yes, right. I mean, I think every average white person kind of has that. Goes like, well, why isn't there business, or why is there like higher crime rates, or why is there disproportionate wealth disparity in these communities? And I think you're right that like we all have that cell phone. We can all do a little bit of that research.
But the point I'm making is that you wonder why,
Mm-hmm.
but do you think it's just because black people are inherently inferior or more disposed to violence, laziness, lack of education? Like, is this like, because that's what I'm trying to get to, because that would be the only explanation besides it being the result of systemic practices.
I don't know the answer to. I think all those things you just went off on. Less educated, more lazy, all these things. I think
Right.
like some people will point to one or two of those things and go like, "Oh, you're just lazy," or "I worked hard. I had to work for everything I got.
Mm-hmm.
Why should you get a leg up?" Or you.
Were there lazy slaves?
I mean,
No, because the idea that they're just all lazy.
A lazy slave is a
Yeah,
dead
like they
slave.
get days off. Like, hey, master, I don't feel like
A lazy
working
slave
today.
is a dead slave.
Well,
Right.
that's what
I'm going to call off today, master.
But you guys got to understand something. Being black, existing as a black individual, black people deflect so much every day. No matter where a black person go, they're constantly. It's like they have a bulletproof vest on for bullshit.
Right.
Society's bullshit. Mm-hmm. We're not weak, because that's the thing that's inherited in us. Black people are very strong. They really are very strong, because
Right.
it's in the black DNA to deal with so much. And we literally we wear a smile on our face and a smile on our heart, but at the same time, the heart has a lot of sadness and pain. And I'm just being honest. We deal with a lot of stuff every day. If you could actually be in the mind of a black person living, you would get the hell up out of it.
I'll give you an example.
You really would.
There was an accident next to my house. Our son got his first car yesterday. So he's cleaning the car, and the police pulled the cars that were in an accident into a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
I'm in my own yard, in my own house. Yet there is a palpable fear of seeing these policemen who they had nothing to do with me, but
Right.
their presence made me instantly feel defensive.
Right.
And I'm aware that that's not a normal feeling. I'm aware that there are people in my neighborhood who don't have that same reaction.
Right.
And I'm aware that it's not right that I feel that way.
Right.
And yet I do, because of my experiences in my history.
Well, I mean, like, maybe you're incorrect in assuming that it's not right to feel that way. I think you probably have a just reason to feel that way. Not that all cops are bad, but
Right.
like,
No.
your experience may have lead you to like I believe so. Like Will and I grew up in Chicago Heights, a very mixed racial makeup community, right?
Depends on where you live.
Well, right. So like I know you're from like the Beacon Hill area,
Beacon Hill?
which is
Andover all day.
right.
Like we gangsters. Suburbs.
Staten Island.
Right.
I
Wu-Tang!
did not spend a lot of time in Beacon Hill. I will say that.
No, you did not.
I did not.
You did that.
It is, but I will say that I really believe that had I grown up as an African American, I definitely would have been put in jail at some point or arrested or killed because I ride dirty. I've had confrontations with cops where I have told cops F you when I felt like I was being unjustly pulled over. Whatever. And I know if I were black, like looking back now,
you would not have done that.
Look,
I'll tell you that
wait,
right now.
Wait, you see, I'm looking at him like,
Like,
really?
listen,
You did what?
You should see the way the cops reacted.
One time I was in the cop with a Mexican friend of mine, and a cop pulled me over on Stony Island, on
Okay.
like 70 something in Stony.
Okay.
And
He was in the hood.
I don't know what happened, but it was like, no, I felt like he was overstepping his bounds, and I kind of told him.
Wait,
to F
you
off.
felt like he was overstepping
Oh
his
yeah.
bounds. Okay.
And I said like, fuck off or something like
And
that.
your Mexican friend is like, oh.
He was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what are you
Yes.
doing right now? I can't, what? He was like so in shock. And then like at the time I didn't really, I was like, well, he needed to be checked,
Oh,
like,
no, he didn't.
But looking back on that, like had I been a black man, I think like it would have been like, we're going to pull you out of the car. This is going to end up.
Well, there's the famous Dave Chappelle skit about him and his friend.
Are we talking about Wayne Brady or
No, not that one. No, the one where he's it's from I forget, Killing Them Softly.
Okay, yeah, I got
Where
that.
he's talking about he's in the car with his friend Chip.
Right. I remember this.
How
Yes.
Chip's like, hey, I think we're gonna race, and then sometimes motherfuckers just gotta race, and but like a lot of his stuff, it's social commentary,
Right.
and it is the idea that literally a person of color, like I'm trying to avoid
Right.
talking. I'm college educated. I'm eloquent to a certain extent when I want to be. I have a very particular way that I speak to white authority figures.
Sure, I bet.
Now, I'm not a deferential person, so I can't, it's like I literally can't say much
Right.
because it becomes tone of voice, it becomes stance. I'm a
Right.
big dude.
Right.
All of that stuff is a factor.
Right.
And I don't know that, like, it's a joke. We joke about that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, the white dude just popped off. Like, we send the white guy to go pop off.
Right.
Like, I've been in situations, I've been on the road in bands where it's a mixed group of guys, and we've gotten pulled over, and we literally have done the thing where we will have, like, it'll be somebody black driving the van. We actually, I won't say the name of the group, but we actually had somebody where he was tipsy,
Yeah.
but he was white, and we were in Minnesota.
Better off. running
And
that, right.
we were like, we could see the hotel. We were right there. And the guy driving, who was black, straight blew the stop sign. Because he was like, where do I turn? He blows the stop sign. We get pulled over. The cops are walking up. And we're like, hey. Because we had to wake the dude up. We're like, hey, get in the driver's seat.
You're going to represent the car right now.
And he was just like, and it was just like, the guy was like, oh, you guys, what's with the trailer and the van? He checked who we were, and we're right there. And he said, oh, you're going right there? Yeah. Dude's drunk. But we made it through. And it really was, no. We can't let you sit here and do this because we don't know where this is going to go.
Right.
With him, at least the baseline changes.
Sure. Right.
So it's that kind of thing,
So wait, when Jody was telling his story, pretty much everyone in the room was just like shocked
Yeah.
at that reaction.
Yeah.
But what that communicates is that somewhere along the line, you guys were either taught you can't do that, or you have experience
Well,
to
it's
back
called
up why.
it's
I've
called the
experienced
talk. It's called the talk.
I've
The talk.
experienced
So,
The talk and
it was like
experience.
that was like white privilege 101 right here.
Yeah, sure.
Like that little minute story. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, are you all like, who wants to share, like, where, like, tell us about the
When
talk.
did you have the talk?
Well, okay, I'll defer.
Oh yeah.
I'll defer. You're on.
I didn't have the talk because I was already living a particular lifestyle where I was coming into contact with the police. My thing early on was from a different perspective, dealing with dirty cops, and
Interesting.
I never ever had a conversation. I don't conversate with cops. I hold no conversations with them for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons is they're always fishing for something. They're not about, oh, hey, buddy, how you doing? No, they're fishing for something. You can just be general conversation. All of a sudden they want to say, what's your name? You got your ID on you? What does that have to do with anything? And then that escalates very quickly.
Right.
And my whole situation with cops, like I say, I never had to talk because in my household, and then I'm older than you guys, so it was a different time too. So it wasn't like it is today or like it's been the last 30 years. With cops in relations with people of color communities have always been shitty. There's never been a time when it's been a we get along, we love you, they love us. It's never been like that because cops technically, and I may be offending some cops by saying this, they're modern day slave hunters.
Woof.
No, they are. They are taught. Let me tell you something. In the 50s, cops were purposely brought from the South to the North because they already had the mentality. We're going to catch them. And that's their mentality. That's their mentality. And so my thing has always been, I have nothing to say to you. There's nothing to talk about. Because I know what you're on. I know what you're about. And my thing when I say dealing with dirty cops is, you never let them know that you're doing anything illegal, even if it's just that much, because they turn that much into that much, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so my whole thing with, like I said, I didn't have the talk, but my hands-on experience, and I don't think this particular segment is ready for some of those things. Where there's a cop I know, right? I'm gonna just say there's a cop I know who's in prison now. He was a serious drug dealer, and what he thought one of my friends told on him, and he had some people in his little whatever. They gave what's called a hot shot.
What's a hot shot?
That's a hot shot.
They gave her this was in the early 80s. They gave her probably was battery acid mixed with heroin, and so she shoots it in, and so it's things like that. So I have a lot of reasons, like I don't want to be talking to you, I don't want to be dealing with you. So so I didn't have to talk. Again, I keep saying I didn't have to talk, but my experience is my experience, because when I was young, it wasn't about the talk. Because see, when I was young, they had the police coming in, the officer friendly thing. That was a real big thing back then. And then they want you to become a cop. And I know that some people who are listening to this or watching this, they're going to perceive me as anti-cop, but they need to understand and respect everyone's individual experience. Sure. They need to. That's the problem with I don't want to say all white society, but a large percentage of white society. They think that if the cop said we done something, we done. I've been accused of 5 murders.
How many actual murders have you?
No, maybe 6. No.
I've actually committed 9.
No.
You thought this was a podcast. We finally got you.
Right. No. Let me share something.
Code word?
No.
Send them in.
Let me show you how the police are. To make a long story short, there was a fire in the neighborhood, and a friend of mine, he came and woke me up Because when you were young, a fire was like, man, this house is on fire. So I said, okay. So we go over to this, where the fire was. I think it was 4 houses on fire. And we found out that 5 people died. And so we're on this block where the fire occurred. So these girls was talking to us. The guys on the block, they didn't like that. So they tried to beat us up. We get away. But me and my partner, we run in 2 different directions. So I make it back home. I don't know where he's at, but I see the detectives turning the corner with him in the back seat of the car. And so they see me. The first thing they did when they jumped out the car, one of the detectives grabbed my wrist and smelled my hands. And so I don't know what's going on. So they put me in the back seat of the car.
How old were you at the point?
I think 17, 18 maybe. Get us to the police station and accuse us of 5 people died in those fires.
Right.
So they said we did it. And found out later the reason they said we did it was because the guys who was chasing us, they was chasing us to kick our ass.
Right.
Because the girls was trying to talk, talking to us. So when the police intervened, I was long gone. But to get the police off of them, they said, those were the guys that set the fire. And so there's always a thing with my fingerprints where I have to stay extra long because of my fingerprints. So they fingerprinted us, and then this one detective came in. And see, this is the other thing people don't understand. All cops are the same. Black, white, Latino, they're all the same. There is no, because you're a black cop, you're going to have some sympathy for.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask. Like, do you have black cop friends, and do you feel the same way about those guys?
Friends and relatives.
Yeah.
But my point is, they had us in an interrogation room.
Mm-hmm.
The main cat who he convicted us and he sentenced us verbally. This was a
Right.
black detective. He came straight in and said, you did it, blah, 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 blah. And we was like, F you, man, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. So they leave out the room, leave us in the room, and I can hear them out in the hallway talking. Like, they're not going to confess to this. So it's time when it was all on the news and everything. Said we had 2 suspects in custody, all that old bull. And we didn't do this.
Right.
But they were willing to just no work, no detective work, no effort
Right.
put in. So let's investigate this. Come to find out, the individuals who actually started the fire were 2 young boys playing with matches. And so they let my partner go earlier. They let me go like 6 o'clock the next morning when my fingerprints came back. I saw that black detective coming across the parking lot. He tried
Like later that day?
yes, like 6 o'clock the next morning when they were releasing me.
Okay.
And he said, he walking towards me. And he was all about apologizing. I mean, fuck you. You trying to get me on death row. I mean, this is a black detective, and I tell people it doesn't matter. Because see, if we're talking about race and race relations, people need to understand that a lot of black detectives will do anything to impress. I mean, not detective, but black cops in general.
Right.
They will do whatever it takes to impress those white cops.
That was definitely true in South Africa.
They will be like, see, I'm just like you guys. I'm not like that. That trash.
If you
One of the
ran,
good ones.
Right.
That's
If
the
you-
phrase
Let me say
we
one
hear a
more
lot.
thing in the era of that. You take a young African American brother, 13, 14, 15 years old, no criminal background, don't even do nothing criminal. The this is not made up. The detective stop him or the cops stop him. Hey, what you doing, little guy? Oh, I'm on my way to the store for my mother. Oh, okay. Talk a little smack to the little kid, and we'll reach in the glove compartment, pull out some dope, no telling where he got it from, and we'll say he got it off this young individual. And what that does, that sends an avalanche of bullshit for that young man's life.
Right.
It puts all these records, all this stuff on his records, and you say to yourself, why would somebody do that?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Because it's evil, and it's not just the white; it's the black ones too. It's this double self. It's this self-hate syndrome hanging with someone who hates you too and hate what you're supposed to be protecting.
And then also, it's a business. You have to understand that criminal justice is a business in this country.
Man.
And any business, you have supply, you have demand. In order for everybody to get paid, because everybody, you go to the courthouse, you go down to Daly Center, from the security guard standing at the door watching people, to everybody in the courtroom, to every cop, to the administrators, the secretary, everybody's getting paid. Nobody's getting paid if there's nobody to convict.
Well,
So
I was
you gotta have some people.
I was at the beginning of modern, what they call private prisons. I was at the very beginning of that concept, the modern aspect of that concept.
Sure.
And I saw it firsthand when I was in prison, where I saw guys, one of the first states, this is in the mid 80s, one of the first states to have a private prison was, I think, Texas. That we
Surprise.
that we know of, because you have to understand, we were inmates and we was hearing about this, and we were like, what? You know, what's going on? And so what they would do, they would take inmates out of the state facilities, and if they had like a year left, 6 months left. Now remember, they were doing beta testing.
Oh, right.
So they would say, okay, you got a year left, you got 6 months left, send them down to Texas, and we'll pay for them down there while they're down there, and then we'll bring a new herd, you know,
Right.
to the Illinois system.
Right.
And we saw that, and we was like, wow, that's tripped out. And then here it is, 20 years later, it's booming and banging.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't have those facilities filled up, they're scared they're gonna close. Like, oh, we gotta get them in here. Now I'm gonna tell you something else I witnessed. The influx of white inmates coming into the penal system. See, there was a time when you didn't see a lot of whites in prison. Now let me back up for a second. In the 30s, 40s, and 50s in prison, there were not a lot of blacks in prison. Blacks started coming into prison.
In the north.
No, I'm talking about the decade.
Okay, yeah.
Blacks started filling up the prisons in the 60s. Because there was a lot of excuses to lock them up even more so. Like they would, oh, how dare they ask questions? How dare are they being upset because we didn't do this and we don't do that? And so what happened, the tides turned. And then the other reason you didn't see a lot of white inmates in prison during that time was because a lot of white inmates were seriously victims of what happens in prison sometimes. But in the mid 80s, it started changing where, since it's about the money, and you come in front of that judge and his team and all that, they start caring about, oh, little white kid, come from this happy family, lock his ass up. Lock his ass. And I
mean, what I've been reading, and I mean, you might have more experience hearing about this sort of thing, is those private prisons get contracted out by larger companies.
Yeah.
And those larger companies pay an incentive based on the size of the prison population in those private prisons. Is that something that you experienced?
Like I said, we was at the beginning of it,
Right.
and plus we were not part of the administration.
Okay.
On that, so we don't know exactly how it was happening in the very beginning, because like I said, it was like a beta testing period, like, you know, like because you have to understand the early private prisons were not big, because see, at the time they didn't know exactly how they want to incorporate,
Well, how they were going to work the system.
right? So they started out small, and then they just started, you know.
Extrapolate
There's a
once we
book
figure
by
it out.
by an author named Michelle Williams called The New Jim Crow. Read it. No, don't me.
So I'm writing it down.
Read it.
What was her name again?
Michelle Williams. And the
From
book
Destiny's Child.
is called. You know what, Jody? You play too
Forward
much.
by Beyonce.
You play too much.
Changed her career.
No. Mark is trying to learn something.
And
you're over there.
My wife is in the middle of reading that book right now.
The New Jim Crow.
Yeah.
Mark, read it. It will answer that question.
Right.
Seriously.
Because it's a whole thing. That
Yeah.
book is really important because it lets you understand the prison industrial complex at a more basic level.
Right.
It's not this big
No.
concept.
I know someone listening to us probably say, well, we sound scattered and all that. But you have to understand, what we experience is scattered.
Well, I will say, like, just, the half hour we've been sitting here, like, I think my gut reaction to a lot of this is, like, if I'm just being honest here, is, like, when you say, like, all cops, doesn't matter who they are bad, right? That's
Wait.
Well,
No, I didn't say all. I said a large percentage.
I can
And
accept
he
that.
didn't actually say that they were bad. He said they're the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never said they were bad.
Okay, so yes, but like what is the same thing? I mean, they're all the same.
Let me address that.
Okay.
Sure.
My experience is that the police have an allegiance to each other.
Agree.
Mm-hmm.
That goes beyond race. That goes beyond, in many cases, it even goes beyond morality. I'll give you an example. In Chicago, a young man was killed, shot 16 times by the name of Laquan McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
A number of policemen lied out and out, knowing that there's video. They lied about it.
Right. And
Cover for each other.
Right.
And again, that was that loyalty to each other that was being demonstrated.
Right.
And as a person of color, when I'm in my front yard and I see a policeman, even though he's dealing with an accident, my first thought is, I'm in jeopardy.
Right.
Because you know what? I'm not wearing the color blue. I'm not part of that gang. So therefore, they may be good guys, but to me, I would rather deal with a straight up thug who I know wants my money.
Right. Yeah.
Devil
I
you
know, we know what the score is going in. Whereas the person that is in a law enforcement uniform, all bets are off. It could be, hey, have a nice day. It could be somebody that's being very helpful, very kind, and does all the stuff that he's supposed to do.
Right.
Or it could be somebody that's going to be taking my life that day. I don't know.
So, I mean, how do we get past that? Who has to extend the olive branch first? Or
You
how do
can't
we-
get past it.
Well,
I mean, are we talking
Well,
about completely defunding the police department?
no.
Well, first of all, the term defund is a trigger because it sounds. So let's use the proper term of redirect resources.
Reallocate
Exactly.
resources.
You're,
Right.
you're
Exactly.
reallocating resources. I mean,
Listen, as a taxpayer, I'm offended that my money paying you.
To whoop your ass.
well, for instance,
Why can't that be offensive to me? That's offensive to me.
It's offensive to me.
It should be offensive.
Look at this. Look at it
You
this
know?
way. Yesterday, they were talking about the fact that in CPS, the Chicago Police Department, with the Chicago school system, pays for the police officers in the school. Now, I didn't know that, and through Urban Gateways, I work with. Well, should I say that now? But with Urban Gateways, I'm in schools a lot.
Yeah, I
And
see you're
that-
playing a lot of gigs with the kids. And
Yeah,
all
that's
that,
that's like my musical day job. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
going out to play with the kids. And all the police officers who work in CPS schools are paid for by CPS. Although they are Chicago Police Department, they're CPD employees.
Right.
It comes out of CPS's budget. And I didn't know until yesterday that they make between 100, I think it's 125 up to 150. It's like up to 150.
Per hour to
No, $150,000 a
what?
year. 150 American $1,000.
and every school's got
Not
a
every
few
school.
of them.
They have different. They have different. It depends on where you're at.
Well, I mean,
So
when
if
I was
your
in high school,
in
we had
Lincoln-
cops.
If your school in Lincoln Park, you
Right.
might not have a full-time community officer
Right.
who's there all the time. But if you're in Inglewood, you damn sure do.
Right. Right.
And the guys who get that particular duty, that's a prize.
Well, I
Although
mean,
you might have to deal with some stuff, but it's just like you're making. Do you understand that is principal pay. That's more than most principals make.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I think like we have, I think people would point to, these more violent schools need cops to help control the situation, in addition to like everybody's scared of like mass school shootings. Like when we had, a couple schools get shot up, all of a sudden, like we got to make sure everything's locked down.
Excuse me.
Where did they shoot up schools at?
Right.
Well, it wasn't inner city schools, right?
No, excuse me,
yeah.
because
There are a couple.
you still have to be careful with the word inner city.
Right.
Because, see, some inner city schools are predominantly white.
Oh, sure.
Mhm.
Sure.
But has there been any mass school shootings from kids of color?
When is
Mainly
Ray Ray-
black.
When is Lil Ray Ray
And
came to
Pookie
school?
and them, right.
Pookie and them came to school. Now, I will say that has there been incidents of violence outside of school?
Oh, sure.
Have kids been shot outside of school, walking to school? But specifically, has a kid walked into a school, Columbine style,
A black
a
child.
black child, and shot up everybody?
No, because they can't use the defense of affluenza, right?
Exactly. Oh yeah, that.
Affluenza.
But
That
that's the thing is that we have extreme reactions to things that might happen
Right.
without But let's look at the resources that you don't have. I mean, like I said, I work for Urban Gateways. We go around, we do cultural enrichment programs for kids. I know more about that. That's the reason I understand the economic and educational disparity. More, I've literally been at schools 5 miles from each other in the city that are totally different.
Right.
I've walked into schools where we're met by the sound guy who asks us, the lighting director wants to, how many wireless mics do you need? How many, we're going to set up our brand new sound system. And then I've went to other schools where, oh, y'all didn't bring no mic because we don't have anything.
Well, that goes to the fundamental flaw of schools being funded by property taxes.
Right.
So that right there, that's
Exactly. Which goes back into the businesses that are not there.
Right.
you had asked a question about the talk.
Yeah, I
Yeah, you
just
circle
want you guys
around.
to keep talking.
Yeah, let's circle around to the
you had
talk.
asked about the talk. Now, I didn't have the talk because where I grew up, the level of oppression was so intense that even as a 4-year-old, my brother was asking questions about the lack of fairness that he was seeing at 4 years old.
Is this in Johannesburg?
This is in Johannesburg. Now, our son, he's grown up in the suburbs. We're a middle-class family. He's never lived in an environment where his life was threatened, and we work very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. However, we had to sit him down and explain to him, if for any reason you ever get pulled over, God forbid you get taken into the police station, your job is to keep your mouth closed and ask for us, period. You say nothing else. I don't care if your hair's on fire. The reason is because we understand that as a young black male, the justice system sees him as much more of a threat than he actually is in reality. Mm-hmm. And the justice system is more likely to railroad him into its clutches. So therefore, being that we are the older and more experienced and have more resources than he does to defend him, we have to mobilize ourselves and be there to defend him. Now, if he was a white kid, our thinking, again, we're trying to put ourselves into shoes that we've never worn. Our thinking is that, we'll just show up to the police station and say, you know what, he was having an episode and he was acting up, and here's his therapist record, blah blah blah. Let's go home,
Right.
And so that is how we see that. That is how we see it, because again, we have to live defensively.
Right.
Do you think living defensively puts you, you get pulled over,
Sure.
cop walks up to the door, tells by your
You're nervous.
You're nervous.
Yeah.
You
Nervous
can
completely.
see that.
Yeah.
Do you think that which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, you're being defensive, therefore he's on Kyler. Like, why is this guy being defensive? Because, like, you know, the cop doesn't know what he's walking up
Sure.
against. Right?
And you're absolutely right. And it's a legit question, and the truth is it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because the result is the same. And the reason I say it doesn't matter is because whether I'm nervous or not, I'm also in a situation where I don't know what I'm getting into. We're both equally in that situation.
Literally.
But the thing
I
is
don't know
that
what could happen.
the thing about it though is that I'm not trained. And I don't have a service weapon.
Right. He's got the gun.
He's got the gun, he's got the law, he's got the training. And therefore it's incumbent on him to behave himself as he's supposed to.
The problem is that more often than not, I mean, you can probably speak more to this, is that they don't. You say he's trained, but how trained is that police officer?
Well,
Well, we've militarized our police.
See, but,
That's
right.
But he's trained. He's trained in policing.
But okay,
He's
but
not-
How
he-
many hours
but
does that police officer have to go into?
Here's my point. And you make a valid question. My point is the policeman's job is to apprehend.
Mm-hmm.
That is it.
And contain.
Apprehend. The court is going to judge. And when the court finds somebody guilty, it removes that person from society. That's the punishment. So it's not on the policeman to come and pull out the nightstick and go to work on me. That is not his job.
Well, but I think even when you say it's his job to apprehend, I think I see a lot of cases of like, I don't know if this person's guilty or not, but like, let's just arrest him and throw him and like let the courts deal with it, which I
Sure.
think is also not the right approach to deal with
Sure.
it. Like, I think there needs to be some discretion there and some detective work
Sure.
and some like, well, I mean, you see it on cop shows. I've experienced it myself where like,
Sure.
well, I don't know, you're going to have to, that's not my job. You tell it to the judge.
Sure.
You know, which then again, like, okay, it's just going to cost me a ton of money, and then I'm going to have to go to some classes or whatever, or potentially go to
But
jail.
you beat up the cop, Jody. That's like, Jody swung on the gas.
Again, you bring up a valid point. Now, I would be with you if I knew that the court system treated me equally as it would you.
That's what I'm.
So
That's
for
running
me,
right into it.
my job, in fact, the kid who just got his first car yesterday, the conversation we had was, your job is to not be known by the police.
Right.
Right.
I don't want them to know your name,
Right.
That's it.
because once they know your name, you become an option for
Also,
somebody to check out.
Let me ask you this. So he just got his license. He's going to get pulled over at some point.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen no matter
It's
what.
inevitable.
What was your advice on, like, when you get pulled over, this is what you do?
When you get pulled over, you have to, number one, keep your hands on 10 and 2.
Right.
Only react when if he's asking for your driver's license, only then do you provide it. If he's asking for your registration, only then do you provide it. And if anything goes beyond that, give them my phone number.
Right.
And that's it.
If they,
That's
what
it.
if they like they, you know, what would you advise your son if they go like, we want you to step out of the car? Like, do you just follow orders?
He has to follow orders.
Okay.
Because right then, it's all about preserving life.
Sure.
That is all it's about. Listen, man, I was detained in Wyoming driving to Chicago for 5 hours. The cop knew he was wrong. I told him that, hey, I recognize what you're doing is not right. But guess what? There's nothing I could do about it.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, because I knew that if I tried to escalate, guess what? We're in the middle of nowhere.
The point is,
Anything could happen.
The point is, you do not have the option to tell the cop in that scenario, "Fuck you, you're wrong."
Oh, yeah.
Can't
No.
do
Yeah, I mean,
No, well, that, like,
right.
my when I got to talk, so my parents were older, and so they grew up. My father was born in 1914. He was 54 when I was born. He's older than I am now, than when I was born. He grew up he was born in Mississippi. He grew up in West Memphis, Arkansas,
Holy shit.
and then when he was 12 or 13, he walked across the bridge to Memphis to start working because he had his first job at 8. So his life. Then he came up north in the 50s and started working steel mill. So his life was like, my life was completely better than his childhood. Like, you can't even compare what this dude went through. Because what always killed me about my dad was that he was not bitter. He was not an angry dude. He wasn't angry at the world. But he would talk about, like, having to step off the sidewalk when a white person would walk by, or having to them calling him boy or by his first name, and he's in his 40s.
Right.
And so when I got to talk, and I'm the youngest, I'm a oops baby from a second marriage. So by the time I came along, everything was cool. We got houses, we got cars, we've been on jobs for a while. So, you're 16, you need a car? Okay, here. Here's a 1974 Ford LTD. That was my first car.
And 86, so bad.
Yeah. and so, but when my parents were giving me the talk, they were starting from a point of, we're trying to keep you from getting killed. And that's the language they used. It wasn't, it was, I want you to get home, but I don't want you to be at the funeral home.
Right.
And so I was almost like paranoid, like, damn, like I'm dead. And it was like, look, when the policemen, don't run from the police. Don't struggle. Don't fight the police unless they're trying to kill you. Now, that's one thing my father told me. He's like, if they're trying to kill you, fight back. But if they're not trying to kill you, don't. So, like, if they grab you, don't pull away. As I got bigger and older, I'm a fairly large dude, even less than my fat stage, even when I was all cut. But that was the thing, too. I grew up as an athlete, so I was cut. Immediate threat.
Right.
At 13, 14 years old, because now we're the same size. And yeah, it was the thing of, like, you get pulled over, you do not say anything. Don't volunteer any information, but if you're asked a direct question, answer, but only answer that question. I know I have the right to remain silent, but you better damn not. I'm over 50 now. If a cop asks me something in that scenario, I can damn near recite chapter and verse of the law. Like, well, you're not supposed to question me about that. I don't have to tell you where I'm coming from.
Right.
I don't have to tell you I'm not impaired. I'm not what is this, an investigative stop? Is this a stop because of a violation? What are you doing? I know all of that. I don't say any of that. I'm not doing
your
it.
experience is drastically different than mine, right? And I mean, that's
Yeah,
obvious,
you're
right?
beating up cops. You're yelling now.
Well, but like, even like what you're saying, like when I had when I was, maybe my early 20s, I met another musician who was a cop, and he was like, this is my advice. When you get pulled over, roll all the windows down, turn the interior lights on, hands on the steering wheel, shut your car off, turn the radio off. And I've done that ever since, and it's worked out well for me. But at no point if a cop has asked me, like, where are you going, where are you coming from, I'm going here, I'm coming there, and I'm not in this, like, I don't have to tell you anything. It's like I try to be as giving as possible and reassuring. And
well, my whole thing is I don't like to prolong contact. Like Jauqo said, he doesn't talk to him at all.
Right.
I would talk to you as little as possible.
Right.
I don't want, because I remember my son, my youngest child, there was an issue at school, and they have a cop there at the school. He was in second grade.
Right.
So I came up to the school to deal with this situation. It was a bullying situation, And when I walked in the door, now I'm a parent. It's a school.
Right.
They stop, who are you? What are you doing here? I said, oh, I'm here. I got a call from the school. I have to deal with this situation. I go sign in. He goes, I didn't tell you to do that. And I looked down at him because he's a little dude. And I looked at him and I was like, well, what would you like me to do? His whole face changed because, I'm actually speaking with an adult. He was like, go ahead and sign it. But it was just like that little power move. I got to show you.
Right.
I got to do the flex. Yeah, right. And that's the thing. It's like we get into personality. So like when people talk about defunding the police, there's so many other. I always say that I don't dislike police as individuals because I have friends and family members who are police officers, but I also have friends. I have a family member. Let me be careful. He shouldn't be a cop.
He's gonna.
I've known some cops that
Excuse
shouldn't
me.
be cops.
Excuse me. He's gonna beat your ass when you see this podcast.
I don't think he got the internet. No, but I definitely know somebody. Is that the?
Yeah.
No, he shouldn't. He has.
No,
I
I understand.
he
I
has
understand.
Documented mental health issues,
So then, like,
and he's been a cop for 30 years.
what?
Let me say his name now.
I feel the same way about some cops I've met in my lifetime. That,
Excuse me.
Oh, you're
Can I say something on that?
sure.
That's bullshit.
What's bullshit?
When you got a cop that's cool with you,
Uh-huh.
you know what makes it bullshit? Because you don't know what he does when he's not around you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to seriously understand. You got cops out here who are killing people, raping women, raping children. And they go home with their family. They go home and hang out with their friends. And when they are arrested and investigated for like these way out charges, everyone says, he's not like that. Let me tell you something. He could leave here tonight and go kill 20 people. And people, no, Will's cool. I didn't know. I don't believe that.
You just had to tell.
Yeah. But the thing about cops, and again, who's ever watching and listening to this, I don't hate cops, but you have to understand, respect our experience. And again, do you actually think a cop who's doing certain type of things is going to let you know? Is going to share certain things with you? That's why I tell you, I have no conversation with cops.
Right.
Because you don't know what you're dealing with. You really don't know. Whenever you're face to face with a cop, where it's casual or they're talking to you with the potential to arrest you or charge you for something, you're technically, you have entered a cage with a shark. And I don't
Agreed.
mean, no, let me finish.
Sure.
Because I don't want to sound like I'm dissing your friend, but I'm giving you what we have to deal with, how we have to think,
There's a
because
level
we
of
have to
anxiety.
survive.
There's a baseline level of anxiety.
Right, we have to
that almost every
survive.
Black person in America lives with every day.
To
Right.
the point that when I get pulled over, I have an app on my phone that I tell my phone I'm getting pulled over. The phone goes blank and starts recording.
I've thought about that.
And what you do, you got a baseball bat in your car, you just get out and start whooping them.
That was when I was
And
younger.
stop that. Okay.
Now I own a house, and I don't want to have to pay for all that.
Right.
Because that even
And that-
gets into
wait.
concealed carry and stuff.
Wait, Will.
like
And
that.
again, with all due
You know?
respect, I didn't mean to go off like that.
No.
But that's something that's a reality. Because I hear people all the time, and I hear people, police who have family members say, "Well, my son's a cop." Okay. But it's like when I was young, or when you were young, or all of us, it was things we did away from our parents that we would not dare do in front of our parents. Maybe curse. Something as simple as that.
When like the young family member who joins the force, they could go in with the best intentions ever
They
to
could.
change the whole industry, the way that people look at cops. They can go in with the best of intentions, and I'm going to change this from within. And that's good and fine. They first need to recognize that they're co-signing on all of this behavior. And earlier in the conversation, Jauqo had mentioned you view cops having a history, like historically, or I'm sorry, police officers now are essentially modern day slave catchers.
Yes.
And that drew a lot of bad
Well,
reactions.
I reacted to it like, "Whoa, that's a
Yeah.
pretty harsh statement you
Yeah.
made there."
But you have to
You
understand.
have to look at the history.
You have to look at the history in our experience, in our reality. When I say our experience, I'm talking about every black man and woman existing, whether it's South Africa, South America, everyone of color literally has a not so good. Everybody can write a list of
They're
their issues that they've experienced, and not just them maybe personally, but maybe one of their family members, maybe their spouse. So it's like
And every time you bring those up, what are you met with? from like every time you bring those up to white people,
Yeah.
how do the majority of us react?
I don't believe
Not well.
that. I don't.
Not well.
I don't fucking
Whoa,
believe
that's
that.
that's a stretch.
But you know, Jody
Exactly.
brought up. He keeps trying to ask for solutions.
There aren't any.
Which is a legit approach. In my lifetime, I don't remember a time where we had the opportunity to express our rage, our anger at what has happened throughout generations and generations and generations of people of color.
And
So as a result, right now we're venting as much as we can, but we're still holding back.
Yeah.
We're still holding back.
Is that the older generation who is holding back, or do you feel that
I'm holding
like,
back.
Yeah, well, I think
I'm holding back.
Generation X. I think that millennials and whatever is under millennials, Z, whatever the hell they are, whatever my kids. But I think that one thing I always say that the thing I like about millennials is also the thing that worries me about millennials, and the main thing is that millennials don't wait for permission. They just do things because they want to do. I want to do this. I'm going to do that. Generation X, we're always like, well, first you got to do this, you got to go to school, you got to do this, you got to do that, and then you have to wait until they're ready for your turn. And Gen X, millennials are like, it's my turn because I said so.
Right.
Which can, as the father of a millennial, it can be frustrating. However, I like it in her because she just does stuff. And now we, the post the Civil War era people, civil rights era
Right.
people. But hell, really, the Civil War people too. But
You can speak this because your dad was probably one generation removed from that. Two generations.
Yeah. So his grandfather was slave. So
Your great grandfather.
Yeah, my great grandfather, 2 generations ago. So my parents were older, but think about how many of you people actually know. People know you knew your great grandfather, or you knew your grandfather.
My mom had a birthday last week. She turned 54.
wait
Okay.
a minute. Wait. Excuse me. Wait.
So how old are you?
Your mother is how old?
12.
54.
Wow.
You got a picture? No. No, I'm just playing. No, I'm just playing. No, but that blows my mind. You have your mother is 54.
Well, she was 16 when she had me. So
Oh,
she was really young.
okay.
But can I touch on something right quick? You said you and I just want who's listening to understand that I'm not just saying things, being ignorant. You asked about a solution, and I said twice there is no solution.
Right.
And I want to touch on why I'm saying that. When something is ingrained and embedded, see, white people ain't gonna never give it up unless y'all get your fucking heads cut off. All of you.
Well, I mean,
No.
You'd say that about just about anything, though.
No.
right?
Listen, understand what I'm saying. White people have ran things for so long
Agreed.
and have taken so much
Agreed.
and continue to take so much and continue to oppress and continue. When you ask a simple question, are there any black luthiers out there, and it disrupts a fabric of our society, white society, that says a lot. It goes back to racism is not racism. Anything that a white person do, nothing they do is racist. No, not white, but a lot of white people.
Sure.
The majority.
Right.
Those type of white people, racism doesn't even exist because
What water?
they're privileged at conception.
Right.
Soon as a white child is just the conception of that child, privilege comes with it second to breath.
Agreed.
I'm riding in the car with a white friend of mine. He's just zooming in his little fancy car. Slow this motherfucker down. We see the police on the other side of the street talking to a black guy, a young black guy. My friend, again, he's white. He was more vocal, he busts a U-turn. He wants to go over there. He wants to, like, what's going on, officer? I said, dude, just can we just sit back and observe? Because see, they're not gonna do to him what they're gonna do to me. They're gonna take it out what they want to do to him. They're gonna take it out on me. I'm the one sitting in the car quiet, but they're gonna beat my ass.
Why are you so quiet?
Right. He's the one. Why? What are y'all? He's the one who wants to ask the young black man, how are they treating you? He's cursing, like you. But you guys have that privilege at conception, and white people need to understand what that privilege is powerful. We don't have, see, we have the opposite. Black is a negative. That's taught throughout Hollywood. It's taught throughout black is bad, white is good. All of that. Right, you see the little black sheep by himself. Don't no motherfucker tell you why there's one black sheep and there's 100 other black sheeps. It's just not a lot of black sheep. It's the way their genes do their thing. But at the end of the day, y'all, when I say y'all, the white culture has it made. And y'all ain't giving up nothing.
I'm a lot more optimistic than Jauqo.
Most people are.
I would say, even if
I want to hit them in the throat.
Come on, let's go.
Even if the issue of race is a battle that is unwinnable, I'm going to die on the battlefield.
But that's where we're at.
The hill I choose to die on is that you need to constantly make progress toward equality.
But that's the battle we're all on. But that's why I keep saying there is no solution, because the solution is the trick word.
Right.
Okay, you're a parent. Are you a parent?
No.
Okay, as a parent, your entire existence is focused on making sure that your offspring are safe, they're fed, they have access to opportunity, that nobody does anything to them that is not right or unfair.
I'll burn the whole city down.
Exactly. Guess what? My parents felt the same way about me.
My parents
Just like I feel the same way about my kids. We're all more alike than we are different.
Right.
Race is a construct. The fact of the matter is, what separates us is access to opportunity. Slavery is built on economics. If there was no money, there would have been no slavery. It's no different than racism has an economic foundation. The bottom line is that it's a human frailty, and in my opinion, if I have 10 bases, I'm happy to give you one. But I don't like it when you come and take one from me.
Right.
I have to give it to you.
Right.
I have to. The feeling of benevolence has a superiority about it, and it's no different than the current time that we're going through. Black people are saying, we have been suffering, and you have not heard us. And now that that society is aware that we have a
Black
voice,
is the new black.
that we have a voice. The thing now that I see is there's a certain superiority of benevolence where we should give them rights. The fact of the matter is we all have equal rights, but they just have not been, they've been taken from us.
I mean,
You know what I mean?
I always say it's like this, that there's never been any social change in this society or any society that happened because the oppressed suddenly deserved to not be oppressed anymore. Or that the oppressors realized that they were being oppressive and just said, you know what, we have been really bad. So, you know what, even the Civil War, what was the Civil War about? It wasn't, man, we really have these slaves and we shouldn't. You know, it's not fair that these poor black people have to work for us. No, the Civil War was because a whole group of people went, I want to keep slaves, and fuck y'all if you tell me I can't.
But the abolitionists, though,
It was about that money, though.
but the abolitionists were not, they were not necessarily completely good.
No, they were all
Because
altruistic.
again, if the result of freeing slaves meant that slaves would have been on equal footing, equal access to opportunity with the abolitionists, not many of them would have been down for that.
Exactly.
And that's
like they would have actually gotten the 40 acres and a mule
exactly.
before Lincoln was killed. That was on pace to happen. The moment he gets assassinated, that's taken away.
Well,
I mean, like, think about the actual advantage that black people would have in America if they got the 40 acres
if you
and a
had,
mule.
because
I'll
that's
give
one
you-
thing. We don't have land ownership,
Exactly.
which
Ownership is not
ownership is like a thing.
I'll give you an example. And this applies both in the United States as it did in South Africa, where I grew up. You have a situation where I remember sitting in the living room of a white parent who I went to school with their son. There was a birthday party. I was invited, and we ended up having a debate. And the debate ends up being him recognizing how liberal it is of him to have me in his living room, especially after curfew.
Mm.
And I
Explain
responded.
that part, because they might
Well-
not understand
Yeah, what
what
do
the
you-
curfew
Well,
part is.
before the liberation of South Africa in 1994, during apartheid South Africa, black people you had to have a passbook or kind of like a passport that would allow you to go to white neighborhoods, and you could not be there after a certain period of time in the evening. This is in my lifetime.
So wait,
In my
we
lifetime.
the same age
In my lifetime.
in his lifetime.
So
This happened.
I'm having this conversation with this gentleman, and
He's more optimistic than you, Jauqo.
No, but let him
we're,
finish, because
we're having this
there's-
conversation, and as he's pretty proud of it. And guess what? Compared to all his neighbors around him, he was probably right in many ways. But I pointed out the issue that he's missing completely. The fact that you recognize that I'm sitting in your living room and that this is cool is a problem.
Right. Well, I mean, is he fishing for compliments?
You know-
Is that where we're?
Well, no.
What's that thing? Virtue signaling.
Right.
Is that what it is?
White people just need to be validated.
Look how cool I am.
That's basically how I read it. But the thing is that the point I was trying to make was, I said, look, my father is very well educated. In fact, likely far better educated than you are. However, your access to capital far exceeds his. He can't walk into a bank and borrow the same kind of money that you can, no matter what his job is, based on skin color. The fact is, we live in a house that we can't own the land because the government won't allow us to own the land. And guess what? When they pass on, they can't leave this to me and my brothers. What does that do 4, 5, 6 generations down the road? We're all penniless because all we can spend money on is our clothes and cars or whatever, because we can't buy real estate.
You don't have equity.
We don't have any equity.
The vast majority of people's wealth is in their home.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we were by law barred from accessing that type of wealth and passing it through generations. So therefore, again, as much as I'm angry about the treatment that I get as a black man with law enforcement, or I'm asked to provide ID in places where other people aren't being asked to provide ID, that all bothers me. The thing that bothers me most is the fact that my access to opportunity is not on equal footing, because it doesn't affect just me now. It affects my kids and their kids.
Right. Because it gets into what you think is possible. Like, one of the things that over the last few months that we've seen, since Black is the New Black, and there are certain discussions that have opened up, even within the musical community, so kind of to pull it back to what we all do, is the fact that, so we've established that there are very few black owned black manufacturers. Something I thought about on my way over here was that it often, when you have people who are innovative, who start companies, a lot of times they worked for somebody else in some capacity.
Right.
They learned the business. They figured out a niche that they needed to fill because, oh, I see there's a need for this product because I used to work for blah, 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 blah. How many black folks work in these corporate settings?
Let's offer an example. How many luthiers have a lineage to Ken Smith?
Right.
How many luthiers have a connection to Ken Smith?
Vinny
Vinny Federa,
Stuart Spector.
Stuart Spector,
Ned Steinberger.
and now what's his name? Kevin Brubaker now.
Yes.
All of that lineage, and guess what? Those luthiers are going to also they'll have other offspring of their own from having worked in the shops.
Right.
I mean, you have somebody like Michael Tobias who had Bill Lee. What's the guy's name?
Bill Lee.
Yeah, who worked with him for years. But Bill Lee never opened his own company. And
Bill Lee is a black individual.
yeah, he's a
if
black
y'all
individual.
guys aren't familiar with
Yeah,
Bill.
yeah, but he was part of that team for years.
Right,
I don't
yeah.
think he is now, but he was part of that.
No,
team.
he's not now, but him and Mike are still tight.
Yeah. But it's the thing that's like you said, lineage. It's about that. Like so, and then even at the corporate level, how many product specialists do you guys? How many black product specialists do you know who work at these companies?
I mean, I would like when you were like at the very top of this discussion, going like black-owned base businesses. Like I couldn't name the three that you named. You know,
Yeah,
like
right.
I would Essential Sound Products would have been
At the
one.
NAMM show,
We found out about a string company today.
Yeah, we
I
I didn't know about it.
at the NAMM show,
Who's the string company?
I think it's called BAM. I'll get the information
Yeah.
Then
for
there's
you.
Boom Cabinets, right?
Yeah,
Is
right.
Larry who owns that?
Excuse me.
Is his name Larry who owns
Oh no,
Reverend doesn't.
well, no, that's a
That's-
low fat.
Drew
That's
Williams.
low
Not the other,
His
but the
cancer
other,
friend.
Right, Drew
the guy from
Williams.
DC.
Okay, that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
No, what I was gonna say though is that at the NAMM show,
Sammy.
there's usually
Oh.
no more than
What was
two
that called?
black manufacturers exhibiting at the NAMM show,
I can't.
and
And I was trying to
And-
think last night, how many exhibitors are there at the NAMM show?
and the thing and
There's
So
500.
Jody had his first damn show this year.
Yeah, that was at
It's
2019.
$1,000?
was the first
Yeah,
one.
he was
Over
on
1,000?
Yeah.
I didn't realize
And
there
you
were like
survived.
other buildings to like date.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, there's
So
more
think
over
about
here.
it. Two
Yeah.
black.
so
black
that I know of, and I walked that floor, and so. But the thing about it again, it's not an issue of supporting black manufacturers just to support black manufacturers.
Right.
First of all, they have to have a good product, and secondly, there's a recognition that hey, you have obstacles that are more than the guy exhibiting next to you in the next booth. So for me, I want to try and kind of help give you a little boost to give you more of a shot at making it, you know, and that's where I come from with respect to, you know, my wanting to support businesses like that. But the fundamental of it, you still have to have a good product.
Yeah, I mean, I think like when white people go, "That's racist," I think it's because never in my mind have I considered buying an instrument because the manufacturer was white. Right?
Sure.
Right.
But that's because I'm coming
Because
from a
they're
place.
all white.
They're all white.
Sure.
Right?
You
They're
don't have
all
to think about
Sure.
it.
right. So by default, like, why does it? I mean,
It's-
maybe
it's
if,
why is there
if
no
it
white
were all
history
black
month?
manufacturers
Sure.
and only a handful of white guys, I might go like, maybe I should support the white guy. right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I come from a place of like, support who you want to support. Like,
Yep.
I you know, if that's a reason why you want to buy an instrument is because it's made by a black builder, then go. I don't. Who cares?
Sure.
It's easy for guys like us.
I was,
Right, to
I was
say
about
that.
to say it's kind of
You have choices. You have 1,000 choices.
Right.
Well,
We have 4.
Right.
right.
What's the
I do
Jamaican
have a
brother?
question.
I can't think of his name.
Well, I mean, there's no black
Cunningham,
master builders at
something
Fender,
Cunningham.
right? Like,
No.
I mean,
Say
I
that
know
again.
No.
master builders at Fender. Like, there's a handful of guys. I think they're all white, except for I know John Cruz, right? But I don't think
Yeah,
he's there
gone.
anymore,
Yeah,
right?
he's gone.
Oh, why? Anyway. Anyway.
What was your question?
Well, it's often obstacles are often talked about.
Yes.
That's something that like I know that like I've never really experienced myself, but I've read about it a lot. I've heard a lot of stories about obstacles. One of the things that I would often hear is that for us to go out on the side of the street and sell this bottle of water, like it's probably going to be easier for me. You're probably going to have to work 10 times.
Where's your
harder.
permit,
Oh, no, no,
Vuyani?
oh, no,
Where's your
no,
permit
no,
to
no,
sell
no,
that
no.
water?
The police is going to ask for a
That's my
permit.
point. So the reason I bring that up is I guess I have a question. Like, in your experiences, especially in music, let's just try to keep this focused on in the musical world.
Yes.
Yeah.
What gig did you apply for or audition for that you felt you had to work 10 times harder to get that gig or even audition for that gig?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me piggyback off of that because I know this is a discussion I feel like I've seen before, where like wedding bands
Yep.
gotta
Yeah.
have
Gotta
a
go
white
there.
girl or a white guy singing, right? Or at least
Yeah.
one white person in the band, right?
I can break down.
So let's hear it, right? Because
So,
my wife is a wedding
because
singer,
oh, really? Okay.
and she knows she gets hired because she's white.
Look, I literally just had a conversation with a friend who is this is a black female, amazing singer who works with a bunch of people in corporate settings.
Right.
And we had a whole discussion about the fact that with band leaders, the tip. So, and let me say that there is a difference now with some newer bands, but traditionally, when I came into the whole thing, and I've been doing corporate gigs since 1988, I have often been the only black person on the gig playing in the rhythm section. You will typically have, the makeup will be that you will have a black female singer who only sings the R&B songs. She sings all the Aretha Franklin, all of the stuff like that, and maybe like some of the modern stuff.
Right.
You'll have a white lady who sings the pop stuff.
Britney Spears, Taylor
You
Swift.
have a black guy who's going to sing Motown
Right.
and R&B stuff. Then you're going to have a white guy he will do that too, but he also does Sinatra and stuff
Right.
like
It's
that.
Michael McDonald.
And right. But once again, we get into ownership. Because I've seen bands where they have, there's a band in town that I've worked with in the past, and they basically almost always have an all-black band. When he started the band, it was because there is a band called the Gentlemen of Leisure. I'll say their name. They are an all-black band that are owned by black people who almost exclusively work on the North Shore. All the Jewish weddings, bar mitzvahs, things like that, they've been around for 40 years. And they are owned by black people. But the booking agents, the money's still hitting somebody else's hand first, but they're owned, the people who owned it are black. This guy started a band, a white guy. I'm going to compete with that because there's they're sewing up that market. So he hires a bunch of black people. But not one black person owns anything. We worked for him. I hated working with him because it was like some slave owner, overseer type vibe. You know, like he would, look you up and down when you walk in the door. You don't even do anything. What do you do? Well, he counts the money, hands me my check.
Right.
Now, if you look at the bands around town, and there are tiers
Right.
to all of this, the jobbing bands in Chicago, the upper tier, there is two. There are two bands at the upper level who are making the most money that have black ownership. The Chicago Cats and the Gentlemen of Leisure. Every other one of those corporate bands is owned by somebody white. They do hire black people. So some people would go, well, look, you still get gigs, you still get hired, but we're talking about ownership. There's a difference between me paying you $500 to come play bass and me making $5,000 for booking a gig. I live in a nice a mansion. I'm making money. I don't care. I'm making money as a musician. I'm like, hey, cool, I got this gig. I'm making this money. It's great. But I still don't own anything.
Right.
I can be fired. You could get rid of me if I sub out too much. You're hiring me because of who I play with. There are guys where you look at the resume of the band on their website, it's all the band members.
Right.
Because that's where the credibility comes from. That's what I want. I want these badass musicians who play with all these people, so I can borrow this credibility
Look at this thing that I own.
at this thing that I own. But I'm not trying to pull you. I'm not saying, you know what, Vuyani, you're a smart dude. Let me pull you in as a partner. Let me give you a partnership. Well, we're going to start we're going to split the band. We got so much work. Remember work. But,
Right.
but we got so much work. We're going to split the band. I'm going to put you in charge, but I'm going to bring you in as a partner in my company. I'm going to teach you, I'm going to let you have these contacts with these booking agents and wedding planners and all these other people because I want to bring you in as an equal partner. Ain't going to happen. And people in the comments can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm not.
But the other thing, though, even if you started your own band, which you have every right to do,
Yeah.
your access to those gigs is limited.
Yeah, because you still have to go through these people. Because that's who's going to, there's not somebody who's booking stuff like that at that level where you're going to make that money who's black. But so what I said, now I did say it's different with the younger set, but it still gets into ownership because now you're seeing, because the music has changed, it's a generational thing. So now you gotta have somebody who can sing and rap and dance and all of the music is urban. So I have to have people who can play urban music. So I'm gonna have a bunch of black people on the gig. And once again, I'm paying them well. But I'm still the money's still hitting my hand first.
So the question is then, why are you saying that there's like a gatekeeper that prevents you from starting your own thing? And
no, it doesn't. No, but I'm still going to have to go through you to get.
The obstacles are heavy.
I'm still going to have to go through somebody to get the jobs that pay that money.
There is a gatekeeper for the jobs, not for starting. You can start a band
Right.
anytime.
Start a band.
You can do
Right,
whatever
right,
you want, But there are, and I say this there's a drummer who used to live in town. He moved up to Milwaukee, who slid to me a promo packet. I don't even remember the name of the band of one of the top corporate bands, and he knew that I was curious about that world, and it almost was, hey, meet me outside. I gotta, I'm like, really, and sure enough, I looked at it, and it was well put together, but there was nothing that really stood out about it that to me felt like it was unreachable at all. And however, it was clear that as much as it is about the quality of musicians that they hire, it's more about the quality of work that they've got, and that's what is really protected. So not everybody can just walk in and simply say, hey, I've got this killer band, and suddenly you have equal access to compete for the same work. All I'm asking for, not just in music, just in life in general, I just want equal opportunity to compete for access to opportunity. That's it.
Well, so pivoting slightly to the cover band scene, because I think there's a distinction between wedding bands and corporate bands and cover bands.
Yes.
I have a somewhat insight into the cover band world. My wife plays in a couple cover bands, and working at Bass Club, Mark, the owner there, plays in a lot of cover bands, and it seems that all the big, I can think of half a dozen big cover bands that are all white, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess the question is multifaceted. Do you feel the same kind of restriction, gatekeepers, when it comes to cover bands? And two, cover bands are playing burb gigs all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see black bands doing the cover scene in Schaumburg, in wherever,
Who lives in Schaumburg?
Every once in a while. Well, there are some bands. There's a circuit that there are some places. I've worked with, and they're like older cats, and they play these places in the suburbs. They have a little circuit that they do. And to the point of where I was kind of like, oh, really? This is a thing, But but what you're talking about, the Maggie Speaks,
16 Candles,
Hairbangers
whatever,
Ball. But
yeah.
also, let's also remember that Hairbangers Ball and 16 Candles and a lot of those other groups are actually corporately owned. They're franchises.
Right.
So they're cast.
Right.
I need a guitar player. I need a drummer. I need somebody who looks like this. I need somebody like. But yeah.
But they're all booked by the same person.
They're all booked by the same person.
One or two people, right? And I can't think of a black band that they represent.
You're not going to see too many of them. I mean, they're if you're talking about like Chicago street festivals, and all the people who every weekend, pre-COVID, there was a street festival. If everything was normal, there'd be one going on right now.
Right.
They're booked by 2 or 3 people.
Right.
In Chicago. Look at their roster.
Yeah, I can't. There's no.
Yeah.
You're not going to see.
And those are the decent paying
band.
gigs, right? To get Street Fest, Randolph Fest.
You make it $250, $300
right.
for a 4-hour set.
Right.
And you're building up a following. But that's the kind of thing. That's where you look at the end of the year, and you end up with 30 or 40 grand from doing all these gigs.
Right.
But if you're excluding, and once again, we get into the music that everybody listens to, pop music. What is pop music? Pop music isn't just one set of people. Now it's, if you can't pull off a Beyonce song, if you can't pull off any of this other stuff that's more made by black artists, then you're going to have problems working in that circuit. I mean, because I can go into a deep dive about that, like the whole thing, people using tracks.
That's huge in the cover band.
Right. They're all using track. It's pushing a button on an iPad. The iPad is the star of the show.
They're not even playing guitar.
Because I've worked with, I remember I was working with a guy, and he had a concept of doing acoustic versions. He played acoustic guitar, and he would do hip-hop songs, 90s hip-hop. But it was like a hybrid of he would play acoustic guitar, which is a thing,
Sure.
And he
G-Love and the Special Sauce.
Exactly, because we did a couple of those songs, and he expanded it to, and this was the band that Dana and I played in.
Okay.
And he I want a rhythm section. Do you know the grief that guy got for walking in the door with 2 black dudes? Wow. I've seen it.
Wow.
We have worked, I will never forget, we worked at a club downtown on Clark and Grand, and it's an Irish bar, quote unquote. And the manager, the look on his face when I come walking in with a bass, and this other brother walks in with drums, and he's looking, and we were doing him a favor because it was a last minute call. We do the gig, the people enjoyed it. It was kind of like a vibe. It was like, hey, here's somewhere we can come work. Here's another room that. And I asked him later, the principal of this particular band. I asked him, well, what happened with that? And he was like, man, the dude, the vibe you felt.
It was real.
It was real. Because I pick, you pick up on microaggressions fairly quickly. Like, damn, you a little short with me, and what door did you come in? And all the, Right. It's like you catch that vibe, and I always say that you have to go through this thing of asshole or racist, which is another thing as a black person. You have to you have to develop this thing of are you just being an asshole right now, or are you being an asshole with some extra racist sauce on it?
Right.
Because certain things don't make sense, and you can let it go, but so that and this is youth culture because. Cover bands play in places where people go to drink.
Right.
And they go to drink and party and have fun and hook up and do all the things that young people do when they're in their 20s and they're out of school and they go to the bar on Friday night and sing the songs they want to, everybody knows. And they're in this all-white environment singing black people's songs.
I think the cover bands that I see a lot are doing predominantly white guy music, right. Jesse's Girls, whatever, the bands of the 80s and 90s, I think.
Right.
You're ready to say something.
So, but what I want to, the thought I'm having.
I'm nervous now.
The thought I'm having is this: is like we've talked a lot today about follow the money, right? There's the prison industrial complex, and people getting arrested. There's a money thing there. Mm-hmm. When it comes to like say cover bands that are playing these burb shows, are black bands not playing there because those black bands aren't going to sell tickets there because the white audience wants to see white bands playing white songs?
Nope, not at all. How many? Think about it. In traffic, how many white kids do you see blasting rap music out of their cars?
Right.
Oh,
in fact,
I do it.
Gangster rap. Who's the largest audience for gangster rap? White suburban kids.
So
they know every word.
So if you show up, and the other thing, it also doesn't preclude black bands from playing white music either.
Sure.
Right.
So that's
big,
the other
though.
thing.
That's
But
big.
I mean, how
That's
many
big
black
right there.
bands are playing white guy music? I mean, are you playing Jesse's Girl? Are you playing?
I can't. Yeah, I can't.
I mean,
I like all that stuff.
I mean, I haven't seen it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right?
Right.
But like, that's just my thought. Is like, if it were selling and it was making money, they would be there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm just trying to. Jauqo, go.
No.
He says no.
No. It gets into the imagery thing. It's the psychological aspect of imagery, the connection between the brain and imagery.
Sure.
And it comes down to who wants. A lot of white people they would look at a predominantly black band, if not an entire black band, doing Jesse's Girl.
Right.
It doesn't work for them. Their psyche.
I would love to see that. That'd be so good.
Well, but do you want to see him like doing Jesse's Girl, or do you want to see him like funking it up a little bit?
Well, that's different.
I hate that song. Really.
But wait a minute. But Jody, you're thinking like a musician now.
Right.
See, you're thinking like a musician now. We're talking about a non-musician audience. If a predominantly black band come out doing Jesse's Girl or Hall & Oates, they're killing it.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. It doesn't work in most instances.
Well,
But
that's my
and
thought.
I've done
Why
that
does
because
it work? Why does the inverse work?
Because it's like this. White people nature is to copy. You guys are the first at copying, taking shit and making it your own, whether it's authentic or not.
Sure.
You guys are great
I
at
was in
that.
Sublime tribute, man. I know.
It comes down to
Yeah.
it's almost like you have to understand how throughout society black people have always looked a lot of people look at black people as being talented,
Right.
and amusing, funny,
Amusing. Yeah.
cuddly, all that type of shit. But they don't want to see it when it's done. But then with a white band, because I've been looking at this my entire life. A white band comes along and half-ass be doing black music. It blows white people's mind. They be like, it blows their mind because
My favorite is
Mike is legit. Though.
my favorite.
Mike McDonald, he's legit.
Oh no,
yeah, Mike McDonald's legit.
But
No.
Motown covers.
No, but
Oh, yeah,
but wait a
yeah.
minute. But back on that record, do you understand what I'm saying? It looks like the copyist has mastered the originators, the innovators, the pioneers. That's how it looks.
Well-
but to us, But to us, we can feel it. We can feel it.
So when I look back at like white guys stealing Little Richard music, and I listen to their version of Little Richard, I go, what is this crap? I mean, maybe if I just heard that, I'd go, this might be kind of good.
You are-
But then when I hear
That's
Little
it.
Richard, I go, holy shit.
But-
this is what I want to hear.
But see, here, once again, we have to get into history. You have to understand the segregation of culture back then.
Sure, yeah,
So-
we're in a different time.
We're in a different time, but when Little Richard came out, so black music used to be called race music.
Okay.
We had black radio stations that only played black music, which you could tune into if you moved the rabbit ears around, you could hear it. But a lot of so the reason that Pat Boone could do Tutti Frutti
Right.
was because the majority of white people had never heard of Little Richard.
Right. And that's what I said.
And-
Like, if
and-
I had just heard Pat Boone, I'd go, oh, maybe this is all right.
Right. But
then-
then you hear the real thing. And
Jauqo
it's like,
comes
yeah.
over and goes, nah, man, listen to this shit.
And
This
I've
is
done
great."
that before. Literally, I've actually done that.
Well, look,
Like,
have you
check
guys
this
ever
out.
heard of the movie Searching for Sugar Man?
It
Why not?
sounds really familiar.
Right.
Okay,
Rodrigo,
so
right?
Rodrigo. So it's this guy from Detroit. Short version is a guy, a cult artist from Detroit who made really like one record, and ironically, where it blew up the most was South Africa.
Right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And this guy, he went and found this dude still living in Detroit, takes him over to South Africa where he is this hero. And they're
Has
like,
no
oh my
idea.
God. So I say to Vuyani, my South African friend,
Of course.
man, I saw this great movie, man. Searching for Sugar Man. And like, you hip to like, because he was like the biggest thing in South Africa. Vuyani goes,
What are you talking about?
like literally. And I was like, no, it was in South Africa. And he goes, nah, bro, you don't understand. Like, you don't understand.
Segregation
It was
was
right.
complete,
Yeah.
man.
So this was America. Like, this is America up until the 50s and 60s, where there was more.
We're going to keep the money amongst white people. And
Yeah, but we're still going to exploit.
Sure,
You know,
right.
all record contracts say that they have the right to exploit things. So that
Right.
we're gonna.
Oh, I
we're
just
gonna
signed a licensing deal that had the word exploit.
exploit. Yeah, it's a legal term.
And
It's
I
a
was
legal
like,
term.
it says exploit.
What did I do? Right, what did I do? First time I saw that, I was like, what? but that's the point, is that, you have this, and then, but the thing is, if you don't keep the historical narrative, if you're not talking about how this came to be this,
Right.
then Stevie Ray Vaughan is the greatest blues man in the world,
Right.
playing Jimi Hendrix.
But, no, but on the
You know.
on the flip side of that,
And I like Stevie Ray.
whenever a black person is sharing history and the pioneers with a lot of white people, some white people look at you as being racist.
Once again, you're racist.
Right,
Stop
they
saying
do.
black
They,
people
no, they
invented
do.
everything.
Like if someone
You did
says,
not.
like, before Pat Boone, there really was Little Richard, and you're talking about, check out this record by Little Richard, and check out this black individual who inspired Little Richard himself and things
Right.
like that. And you try to school them, but they looking at you side eye like, this dude tripping. What is up with this dude? It's not about black people always want black people on top, but we should be at an equal playing field.
Right.
And it's very sad that we don't have that in 2020. We don't have that equal playing field, or
Right.
equal level field. Seriously.
Oh,
Seriously.
I think both Mark and I would agree.
It's sad. I mean, it's sad, because I don't want to get into it, but my experience with stuff like that, it's really sad.
Well, what is your personal experience with having to work harder?
You know what? Okay, I'm gonna say it.
Say it.
Because you've been holding back.
No. It's not about holding back. I'm just gonna on one thing. What if you had an idea in your head, you turn that idea into a reality? I think, I'm talking about the low C sharp string. And it didn't exist nowhere.
Right.
Nowhere. No one ever seen one. And it's a proven fact that it didn't exist until this black dude come along with it.
Mm-hmm.
You ask the question, I'm going to answer it. If I was a white boy, I would have been on the cover, or not necessarily on the cover, but it would have been in-depth interviews. Where did this string come from? What is that all about? And not just the string, but the electronics to help produce that open C sharp string. The instrument. What type of woods did you sit down and felt? What made you feel these would be the right strings? And then when I released an album called A Low C Sharp Theory, they would have set me down and said, how did you get that sound? How did you do that? They would have been dissecting my everything. Now someone could say, oh, Jauqo, you're the victim. No, this is what black people have been dealing with before I was even born.
Well, like your 15-string bass.
Yeah. Oh, let me tell you about that.
You know.
and I hope he's listening. That bass didn't even exist. Nowhere. I'm at the NAMM show. I'm sitting at the Warrior booth. Warrior Instruments made the world's first 15-string bass, a 5-string, triple 5-string.
Meaning it's tuned B-E-A.
No, it's tuned E to C.
Oh, I'm sorry. E to C.
Triple course.
Two octaves, yeah. Two
And
octaves on top.
so years later, after the instrument was made, I'm playing it, whatever. I'm sitting at Warrior's booth, and the guys from Korn stopped by the booth. No, I'm not saying. I'm just sitting there, just doing nothing, really, just chilling. And they see a 15-string bass, and they're just going all like, oh wow, look at this, and they called Fieldy over, and he was looking at it, and they was like, oh wow. And a few years later, Ibanez made a 15-string Ibanez.
And he's on the cover of Bass Player magazine.
And people were like, look at
the
this.
first 15-string
Right.
bass.
And,
I'm like,
and some people were on the internet saying, nope.
Yep.
They called them out. And so I go to NAMM show. I'm looking for the guy who made this for Fieldy.
Right. You're at the Ibanez booth.
I go looking for him. They say, he's not here right now, the guy. I come back.
You knew you were coming.
I don't know, but the thing was tripped out is I meet the guy. You know what he tell me? He says, we can't even keep it in tune. Wow. This is what the guy tells me. He said, it's the same exact neck as his signature Ibanez. They didn't do a lot of mods or alterations to it. It was just basically his regular 5-string, and they slapped some more strings on it. But that's what I'm saying. I lived that.
Clack, 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 clack.
And not just me, but other black people before I was even born. Those are the things where somebody can say, oh, Jauqo's a victim, he's bitter. No, this is what black people deal with.
You have to work 10 times harder.
Even with the magazines, I was zero to them. Who the hell am I?
And meanwhile, there are like plenty of like doom metal and like low metal.
Yeah, I mean, there's reference of what I've done.
We're playing those kinds of strings now.
Right, but they don't. It does not come back to where that string come from, or some of the other type of instruments. And then it just like I said, it's my experience, but it's not my experience. It's all three of us, every black man before us. Because you have to understand, I always make a joke about Thomas Edison. Do you really believe he actually invented what they say he invented? Because you have to remember back then, all those white guys had black assistants, black cats who knew a lot more than what they have the world perceiving. They know they was working. These black people, they knew a lot. Well, very intelligent.
It seems like the black innovators, the black inventors saw
there are black inventors?
Yeah, we already talked about
right.
Lots of them.
There's lots of them.
But that's the point is you see all the litany, the huge list of major inventions.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, there's this very universal problem and there's this very practical solution. For instance, the fucking doorknob. Right? Like,
who knew?
Couldn't get out the door.
Who knew?
And now we can.
But let me say,
the white people are like, no, can't get out the door.
But let me say this for the listeners. I am not a victim. It goes back to my experience being a man of color in America. It didn't start with me. It was hundreds of years before me. There are many innovations and inventions that were created by black people that were literally taken from them and swept under the rug, and other people get that, for lack of a better word, they get the credit. And what comes with credit sometimes is money.
Right.
And all of us can use a little money. All of us, and let me say this one more thing about this C-sharp string. I have to give, at the time, this was before I was with SIT strings, the guys at Dean Markley, whenever a person is open to something that can seem so far-fetched, if they're open to give it a shot, you have to always maintain the respect for them. Those cats had me coming to the Dean Markley factory on the weekends, sitting down, being attentive to what's in my brain. And then one day they came to me after the string was out. Dean Markley made the world's first low C-sharp string. They ran them for a while, but the string was such an oddity, and it was really 20, 25 years ahead of its time, They came to me one time and they said, and I understood. This is what you have to understand. Black people we're intelligent enough to understand business
Right.
and reality and truth. They said, hey, Jauqo, we can't keep stopping the machine to make 5 or 10 of these strings. But we were 20, 25 years ahead of the game. I mean, to where the record, to where the usage of that type of string is today.
Right.
And I understood that. I said, I wasn't offended.
Right.
I wasn't mad. I wasn't pissed. I wasn't, oh, I'm a victim. I had to understand the reality of that. But then, but it goes back to how, because there's so much that I'm not even talking about that I've done, that I've got paid for some things, but it still goes back to a black man, in a lot of black men's mind, they say, it's a natural thought to say, if I was white.
Well, so I've been thinking about this. So I've also had negative experiences with police officers, and I could attribute, if I were black, I imagine I would say those negative experiences happened because I was black. I happen to not be black, and I still had those experiences. So I think there's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg here? Like, I'm not trying to marginalize or minimalize the black
No, it's
experience,
valid.
and I get that, like, we all started the race. The black people were held back, and then the white guy started running, and then okay, now you can start running.
It's one of those things where, okay, yes, we've all had negative experiences, and what do people always say? Oh, well, more white people get killed by the police every year than black people, but there are 5 times as many white people in the country per capita.
Right.
If we're doing statistics,
You're 2.5 times more likely to be put in
6.
jail. Is it
we're
6?
Six.
4 more times likely to have contact with the police.
Right.
We're 6 times more likely to be arrested because of that contact.
And killed.
And killed.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise.
But here's the thing. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. Never have. But why am I consistently having these experiences?
Right.
And I just can't get away from that. Why am I consistently having these
You're
experiences?
doing all of the things right. You're
I'm
all
doing
the things you're
everything
supposed
that
do
I
and
know
still
to do
having
right, and I'm still running into those experiences.
I mean, I'll give you an example. My oldest daughter graduated from SIU, Southern Illinois University, 2017. I take my 2 youngest kids down, who were, 3 years ago, so they were 6 and 7. And we go down, we do the whole graduation thing, and then I actually had a gig, so jumped back in the car to drive 6 hours back to Chicago. Well, the Carbondale police, or whatever county that's in, they thought it'd be a wonderful time to have a roadblock on graduation weekend.
How nice of them.
Man. Seatbelt
So-
check. Stop.
Yeah. So we're a safety check. That's what it is.
Safety check.
So we're driving back. My kids are in the pajamas. They're in the car. They're asleep. My son wakes up. He's 6. He sees the police and he says, "Are they going to kill us?"
Man.
6.
Wow.
6. I never, and I'm not going, Trevor, be careful. The police can kill you. I have because I started giving them the talk.
Right.
Because I had to answer, well, why did Trayvon get killed? Why did Tamir Rice get killed? I have, my kids are smart, so I got to tell them why. But I'll never forget that because it stabbed me, because look we came from the high of their older sister graduating from college.
Right.
And amongst the thousands of people who graduate, we're one of them. Hey, we're all together. We're happy for our kids. And then, oh shit, here's a roadblock. I'm going through my checklist in my mind. My insurance. So unfortunately, I had my stuff in my wallet. So I was like, okay, my wallet's in my right hand, my left pocket. So I have to reach down. So I have to tell him, because I had kids in the car. So the insurance is here. I know I'm good. I know everything's good. So I'm not worried about that. All my lights, I check. Like when I get in my car, any car I drive in, I check all the lights. down to the license plate.
I've been
law.
pulled over for that too.
Yeah, you know.
Some stupid
But
shit.
yeah, and it is. But the difference is, you stupid, you pulled me over for a damn $2 light.
Right.
But I'm thinking about, okay, if you run my name and there's somebody, I might be here for an hour because you're going to find out if I have a warrant when I don't.
Right.
Again, I think we're not taking issue with the fact that there's a stop because of faulty equipment. The fear is what that stop could escalate into.
Right. Because
You
you're
know what I mean?
nervous. And I got, and I'll never forget. I go through, but it was instantaneous. I go through my checklist. Okay, this. I have everything. Nothing's wrong with anything. They pass us through. You slow down. They're picking, and I'm counting cars because they're doing the thing where every fourth car you got to go over here. So I'm like,
Am I gonna get pulled over?
but then they pulled over the car right in front of me, but that was only 3. It was number 3, and I was like, oh shit, they went out of order. And I'm literally pulling up with 2 little kids in the car, and the guy shines and he looks, and I'm screaming at them, put your seatbelt on.
Right.
Because you're in the back and I need your seatbelt on. Put the seatbelt, we get through, and like I said, then my son says, oh, wow, we're getting pulled over by the police. What do we do? Are we going to get killed? Are they going to kill us? No, Trevor, they're not going to kill us. We drive on. I'm driving, and like literally for the next 30, 40 miles, because, Carbondale's, other end of the state. But I'm literally checking the mirror because I know I got to drive from Marion County to Effingham. Effingham, you got to slow down because it's a speed trap. I don't want to get, and I'm terrified of getting caught out here with my children. Now, if it was just me, I got to think about, okay, I got these kids,
Right.
and this is the level of anxiety I have, and then my children have the same level of anxiety
Right.
because they're under 10. I've had situations where my son doesn't like guns, although he loves video games with guns. He does. I've taught them not to engage the policeman. Like, I remember we were in the store, a cop is standing in front of us. He's little, so he's staring at the gun, and he stands behind me. Because although this guy is a cop with a cop uniform on,
Yeah.
he does not trust him.
Right. Well, so then, what are your thoughts with, like, currently you can conceal carry in Illinois?
Mhm.
Is that something that I think that, like, black people are afraid of, or is that a thing?
Black people are running to get concealed carry licenses.
This is
like
what I've
mad
seen
right now.
This is what I've seen.
We are
right?
running because. Can we talk about politics? Can we be political?
Sure.
So,
Whatever you want.
okay. At this point, the idea, we never know what's going to happen, but we really, really don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So, as people get desperate to keep themselves in certain positions, white supremacy is, like, I can honestly say, like, you're older than I am. Have you ever seen it so blatant in your lifetime?
Outside of like,
You talking about white supremacy?
Yeah, like where you just had straight up people
No.
just saying
No.
outside of prison.
No.
shit. Yeah.
I
No.
grew up in South Africa where white supremacy ran the country. And we, by law, could not have firearms.
Mm.
And
The white guys could.
no, yeah, oh yeah. And they did.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a firearm.
I
and
can't. I wish I could.
Well, and the reason for me is I hope I never am in a situation where I need to.
I got mine
I
too.
need to
I'll
have
just put
one.
that out there.
I'm neither for nor against them, but I just feel that for me, it's
It's
a
risky.
liability. It's a
sketchy.
liability. It's a
Yeah.
liability that I'm not willing to have, not only within my household, because of the people in my house,
Right.
but also the liability of the responsibility of what happens to that bullet the minute it's released.
Sure.
And I also know that as we've spoken, I mean, because of my own personal history and the way I grew up, I'm very sensitive to these things related to race. And honestly, if I can't talk my way out of a situation, then it's my time. That's just.
I mean,
how
I
see
think
it.
that's I'm pro Second Amendment. I think if you want to conceal carry, you
Sure.
should do that. But I also believe if you're like you're saying, like I'm not comfortable with it for whatever reason, like great, then you shouldn't have one, right? It's a personal preference thing. But my thought is like, you're black man pulled over, already tense, elevated. Now he's got a gun, you got a gun. Everybody's already a little nervous here, and then it's like, yes, officer, I do have a gun. It's on my right hip, right next to my wallet.
Flamingo Castillo.
What's that?
Flamingo
Right.
Castillo in Minnesota.
Right.
Who did exactly, when I took my concealed carry class, they gave us a script
Yeah.
that you are supposed to use.
Everything was by the book.
Right. He word for word, and the dude shot it and got away with it.
Well, I mean, it comes right back down to the basis of what we're saying, that every situation, the results are different because of race in many
Right.
cases. So simply having a licensed concealed weapon suddenly becomes a different argument when you're looking at a person of color, because then they have to start factoring in
Right.
all this other stuff that unfortunately they really shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is different if I get pulled over with my concealed carry than it is if Will gets pulled over with his concealed
Sure.
carry. Like, I think
Sure.
the likelihood of a safe, normal outcome is higher for me than it probably is for
Well,
you.
okay,
right?
like when you took your class, what did they tell you to do at a traffic stop? Are you supposed to hand them your FOID card or with your license, or only if they ask?
Only if they ask.
So my instructor said hand them the card.
Yeah.
Like when you hand them your license, hand them the card, but don't say anything else.
But so now you get pulled over, your gun is with you.
It's around.
Are you saying I have a gun, or are you waiting? Are you not mentioning it? I mean, I feel like I haven't.
Because here's the thing: is that the times I've gotten pulled over, I've literally, knock on wood, and I'm not driving today, but I've gotten pulled over maybe twice in my life for like actual illegal lane change or running a red light or something like that. Other times it's always been investigative. And I've been stopped since I was 16, 25 times.
That's it?
Huh?
That's it?
That's it. 25, maybe more than that.
I'm over here like 25. Holy shit. You're like,
I'm like,
that's all.
And
like, wow.
I've gotten I've had to pay 2 tickets in my life.
That's it?
That's it. Like, I beat a ticket.
God.
Sounds like a white guy over there.
I beat a ticket in Park Forest.
Wow.
We knew about Park Forest. You do not.
Right. You don't go. A cop caught me right on Western.
Western,
And I was going west on Andover, which turns into whatever street that is. And I was coming back east. He was sitting behind me, and when I turned right and went into Park Forest, and he swoops around.
Right.
And he says, "Oh, you didn't stop at that stoplight," which I had, but I'm like, "You can see around corners? What kind of being are you?" And so I decided I wasn't going to pay it. I go to court, and I just, they were like, "You want a trial?" Yes. Hey, if you lose, you're going to get in all this other, I was like, whatever, I'm not going to lose. I was like, "Can I address the officer?" Yes. "Can you see around corners?" And the cop was like, "What?" And I was like, where did you say you were?" He said, "I was sitting here." I said, "Where did I do the violation allegedly?" at the stoplight. I was like, but you can't. That's the street curves. You can't see around corners. Judge was like, and the cop was like, case dismissed. I leave out. Cop says, you get your license back.
Right.
And the cop says, hey, like, I'll see you again.
Right.
I have no record. How, you gonna see me again?
Right.
So, but that's 2 times in the 25 times that I've gotten stopped. I got stopped in way up north, coming from a jobbing gig with a tuxedo on. One of those, so where you going type stops. But the cop watched me load my gear into the car.
Right.
And I have a tuxedo on.
You're a bow tie bandit.
That's it. I dress formally.
So reeling this into like back into the music world a little bit. Do you guys feel like, do you feel like there's pay discrepancies because you're black, or do you feel like you have to charge less to secure a gig or get a position in a band or in the wedding band or whatever it is? Or do you feel like this guy's getting paid as much as I am no matter what? Or do you think there's a discrepancy?
I mean,
there?
there's a black circuit, there's a white circuit. Everybody has the $100 gig curse. The Chicago standard of $100 a guy.
Right.
Which has been since
for 3 sets.
Right. Since the 70s, people were making $100 for a gig. But there's that middle ground which you mentioned, the cover band circuit, the festivals, the street fest circuit,
right?
Where, they're making more money. Cats are making more money because, number one, they have more access to gigs that everybody doesn't have the same access to the same gigs.
Right.
But that makes sense because it's supply and demand. If there's no supply, if there's no demand,
right,
then you can't call that shot. Once you get to the wedding thing, you never get what you're worth. You get what you negotiate.
Right.
So once I put some time in, I know I'm going to get X amount of dollars because by reputation, good or bad. But when we get into like touring gigs and stuff like that, there's some discrepancies in the money.
Yeah.
And it gets kind of deep because you don't know how you can negotiate.
Right.
Somebody's like, hey, I got a touring gig and we're paying $600 a night. You have to have conversations which are difficult to have.
Right.
If you don't have relationships with people, like, well, what are you getting?
Right, and they don't want to say.
They don't want to say.
Because they don't know how much you're getting.
Right.
And they don't want to.
I'll write a number on just put it on the table.
I've been lucky. I haven't had any issues of pay discrepancy, but I also have a day gig. So
right.
When the pay is not right, I pass.
Right. It's easy to say no.
Or if the gig is not right, I charge too much, and it just goes away.
No, that's my experience, similar to yours.
But in addition, about 2 hours ago, you asked a question about, have I, lost a gig or, have we had any hard time getting a gig because of race? I haven't had that issue either. Again, I've been very, very blessed because I've been able to pretty much pick and choose who I associate myself with. Again, if I was a full-time working musician, that wouldn't be the case. I'd have to take everything that comes. Now, that's given me, now I've been on the other side of where I had to, hightail it out of a club, with 6 trucks after me,
What?
Oh yeah.
Let's
Keep going. I gotta plug the battery in this camera. Don't stop.
Yeah, I actually I subbed for a bass player in Elgin, Oregon. The name of the bass player I'll never forget. Good friend of mine, Kathy Breeding, and she got sick on the gig, and they called me, said, "Hey, we need you." So it took me. From where I was, it took me until probably towards the end of the first set to get there, and she looked terrible. And so I get there, and I'm the only person probably in town at that point, and it's pretty.
Oregon is.
They don't even have,
It's pretty clear, and I see the layout, and I immediately, because I'm waiting for them to finish their set, I immediately go up to the owner, and I introduce myself. I tell him who I am, and I say, hey, just so you know, I don't know this place. If anything goes sideways, I'm looking at you, to you to make sure that I'm okay. And oh no, you'll be fine. I'm like, okay, great. I finish out. Now remember, Oregon, you play 5 sets. You guys are lazy here. In Washington, you play 4 sets.
5.
So yeah, so I do the remaining 4 sets, and of course,
$400.
and so anyway, I packed my bass, and for some reason, I had a hard case. I brought my bass in a hard case, which I honestly never do. I usually have a gig bag. And I remember as I was leaving the place, there was a group of women that were sitting at various tables who seemed to leave at the same time. And so we're all coming out of the door at the same time. And I'm thinking, this is really weird, but whatever. I put my bass in the back seat. I get in the car, start the car, and as I'm pulling out of the parking lot, and the way that this club was situated, I would have had to take a left onto whatever street it was, and then the next left would have been the road out of town. I see a bunch of 4-wheel drive trucks, lights coming on, and I think nothing of it. And I see them all filing in the same direction I'm going. And at this point, my radar is like, hey, keep an eye on what's going on back here, because I don't know what's going on. And next thing I see, they're getting closer, and I hammer, I drop it to the floor, and I'm gone. And the thing about it is that I never had any cross words with anybody, but like I said, when I walked in, I sensed that this is not a place I really need to be. And it is funny because we all know that.
Oh yeah.
There are certain environments you walk in and you realize I shouldn't be here.
Right.
I've never
Why
really
would
felt
you?
that.
Why would you? I mean,
Yeah.
because here's the fun.
Well, I'll take that back. I have felt that up until maybe the past, I'd say, 15 years.
Mhm.
There's just certain neighborhoods you drive through,
Mhm.
and
All right.
you're conditioned to. You're going into the black scary neighborhoods. So
Right.
You gotta lock your doors.
But
you
I
gotta
feel that
constantly
way
look around.
but I feel that way when I'm in the white neighborhoods.
Right.
I feel that way when I'm driving in certain neighborhoods.
You're just being watched.
Well, I mean, it's just the margin of error is so.
Yeah.
Like you're listening to the GPS and you miss a turn, but you kind of, I should have turned back there. Well, yeah, and I, because once again, I don't know what's going to happen. In the hood, I can kind of, okay, don't go over there, because we don't like the hood, we don't like gangsters and killers and shit either,
Right.
But along the light of what he was saying, I'll never forget a guy calling me to sub for him on a wedding gig. And I met him there's a club called The Bulls that we all used to play at. And I met him one night, and he's a nice guy, and he's like, hey man, I got this gig I want to do. Could you sub for me on my wedding gig? And I was like, sure. I talked to the band leader on the phone, and I do very much I code switch. Most black people do. Which is, I can speak Ebonics fluently, but I also can speak to whatever level you're at. So I talked to the guy, hey, how you doing? Will Howard here? Hey, what's going on? And, hey, give me the directions and all this other stuff. And I show up to the gig, and they did not know I was black.
Oh.
So when Blackity Black Will walks in at the time with dreadlocks, dreadlocks with a tuxedo on, walking in, hey, how you doing? I'm Will. Where do I set up? The whole band. And
you hear the record scratch.
Right. It's Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours, like records good. So I set up. Here's the gig. I look at the book. I open up the book. It's wedding stuff. It's celebration, brick house, but I'm like,
Right.
okay. I'm just glancing at it. Yeah, okay. Typical what they do.
A lot of black writers.
Right. Motown.
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder.
But the guy walks over to me. One of the band members walks. The band leader walks over, and he goes, "Oh, wow, okay. Let me know. Is this a problem?" And I go, "What?" And he goes, "The music. Is the music a problem?" I was like, "No." Like, what, the light? Or, like, understand? And he's like, "Oh, so you can read music." And
Ooh, Jesus.
And I was like, "Sometimes." And he goes, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, what?" So we start playing, and, of course, this is music I grew up playing. It's black music from black culture, and I'm happy to be black. So I'm playing, and one of the singers, the lead singer guy, he turns around and he looks at me and he goes,
See that?
and he's like, "Yeah." And so we go on break, and okay, so I'm not in the band, I'm subbing, so people don't know me, but it is normal, it is protocol that you speak to people.
Right.
You would go speak to the person who's not the usual, "Hey, how are you? I'm Will." Because, job gigs, you just start playing.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole introduction. Nobody talks to me. Nobody, except for lead singer dude. Lead singer dude comes over and he goes, "Man, I'm going to tell you, you know this music." I can feel the difference in the feel is total. Like our other bass player is good, but, he wants to do this and that. But yeah, man. Yeah, and when you were like putting that slappity thumb on some stuff, and I'm just looking at him because I'm thinking to myself, as corny as this dude is, at least he came over and acted like a human man.
Right. And he's complimenting you
Right,
in his
he's
own
saying
way.
nice things, but it was just like, this is this weird situation. So then the band leader comes over and he was like, "You're really, really good, man. And he's like, "So, like, are you busy?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of busy, but, if anything comes up, let me know. Like, if he needs me to sub, because," and he was like, "Yeah, because very surprising." And I'm just like thinking to myself, dude, we are potentially out because we're done.
Right.
You haven't said anything crazy yet.
Right.
I can't document it. But then he was like, "Yeah, man, because I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't know what to expect because, a lot of guys."
And that's his dumb way of complimenting you.
They can't
is what
read.
it is.
No, he said, "Well, because a lot of guys can't read."
You people.
Yeah.
That's what he meant to say.
And I'm just like,
Right.
"All right, dude, yeah, give me the check, Will." Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, give me one. And I just spent the whole shaking my head. And later, the bass player I was subbing for calls me, and he was like, "Man, you did a really great job," because they're all talking about how great. He said, "But let me ask you." Now, this is the. He's like, "Was there any weirdness?"
Is the guy you sub for black?
No.
Oh, he's a white guy.
No,
Got
yeah,
it.
he's white. And he's like, "Was there, was everything cool? Was there any weirdness?" I said, "Yeah, there's a little weirdness, but, I don't think I was what they were expecting." And he was like, "Yeah, I heard about that."
Wow.
Well, I've noticed this in like the cover band scene that like a lot of the musicians in the cover band world, like you go on their Facebook page, it's like a lot of pro-Trump stuff. And I'm not saying that if you're a pro-Trump, you're racist, but I'm saying that there's a lot of like Blue Lives Matter. There's a
Right.
lot of things that like, whoa,
Not all Trump
what
supporters
are
are
we?
racist. But
Why aren't we marching when it's black on black crime? Why, like shit like that? And it's like, fuck. What am I gonna do? What
hey,
what can I
I
do?
mean, it's a thing.
I had a funny situation that's somewhat similar to what Will had. I was on the West Coast, in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. I had a gig in a small town called Dayton, Washington. And I got there early and I loaded my gear onto the stage, set it up. And so I went and sat by the bar. Of course, I don't drink, so I'm just hanging out. So there's an older gentleman that's nearby. he looks over and says, "Hey, are you with the band?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm with the band." "Oh, I just want you to know that it's okay with me."
Oh, you had his permission.
And I was just dumb. I had no comeback. I mean, I was like, okay.
What year was this?
Oh, this was 98. I had no comeback.
No, because that's the thing. Is
You know,
none of
so-
this is ancient history. Like this stuff is not. Back in 1964.
I listened
this happened.
to Neil Brennan has a podcast.
Yes,
He's the
I love
co-creator of Chappelle Show.
Love Neil.
And I love his podcast. It's great. And he's good friends with Chris Rock.
Yep.
And he's constantly telling stories about Chris Rock telling him stories. One that just blew my mind is that Chris Rock's mother, when she needed dental work, had to go to the vet because she wasn't allowed to go to the dentist in the town. And then had to go through the back door. Wasn't allowed to walk through the front door of the vet to get work done on her teeth. And he's like, Chris is like, this is my mother. This isn't ancient history. This isn't
Right.
generations ago. This was the 20.
The Voting Rights Act was in 1965.
But man, how
68,
bankrupt a person are you to prevent somebody from getting health care? I mean, really?
That's
It
deep.
blew my mind.
I mean,
it's
you've got
sad.
somebody who's suffering.
Right.
I mean, they're willing to pay for the service. It's unbelievable. It's just mind-boggling.
There's,
Right.
I mean, the beliefs even that some doctors have
Mhm.
with regard to black people.
Can't feel pain.
Can't feel
Tolerance,
Right.
thicker skin.
Yeah.
Or, I remember when I was in college, a friend of mine suffered from sickle cell anemia, and he had an attack. And I rushed him to the hospital. We get to the emergency room, and they're refusing to give him pain meds because they're suspecting that he's a drug user because he's had so many intravenous blood infusions
Right.
that they. And I'm trying to explain to him, this guy suffered from sickle cell.
Right.
He's not at all any of those things,
Right.
And yeah, it was ugly.
All right, so we should probably wrap it up a little bit.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, it's been we've been going for about 2.5 hours here, guys.
Well-
have we solved all the problems?
Well, no, yeah, that's the thing. Like, we're not
Yeah,
even
man.
scratching the surface. But to leave with just some thoughts.
We should have done
Like-
that.
Do you all think that this is something that a lot of the changes that you would like to see, the equal playing field, are these things that you think that you'll see in your lifetime?
I think they're achievable, but we have to have a partnership because, again, if people without opportunity and equality grab that opportunity and equality that they deserve, then they will be seen as being really not only as they'll be seen in a negative light. So there's a certain need for us to partner with each other in such a way that we do this in a way that we all. I mean, even sitting here, I know that the conversations that you and I have had, the conversation that we're having right now, you actually are thinking about this, trying to figure out a way, how can you do better in the same way that I'm thinking, how can I do better? But it's not going to happen just because it's time. It's going to happen because we choose to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of us are going to choose to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who choose not to make it happen, we've got to find a way to have enough critical mass of the people that are choosing to make it happen in such a way that those people get drowned out. So that's what I think.
My thing on that is, I would really like to be alive to see an explosion of an equal playing field. I personally would feel better because a equal playing field it can make those who need and want that equal playing field. It can make your life so much better. It goes back to, like I was saying, being a man of color, we deal with so much. We're not victims because we just take it we deflect it to the best of our abilities, but we are human. You know, you get wore down, but then you gotta bounce back up. But I want to see an equal playing field. I would love to see that, and I think if we get that as a starter, a lot of other things could trickle in that can make our lives better. It goes down to poverty, stereotypes. So much has been taken from black people, land, so much. It's just so much. So can we get that? Can we get it like that? Because it's not like black people aren't qualified. They're usually more qualified than those who say they can't do anything.
Right.
So I just, I don't.
Sometimes black people wrote the blueprints.
A lot of times, and again, I'm gonna say it again for the record. I would love to see an equal playing field. I would be happy, personally.
Well, how does that look? What is an equal playing field? What does that look like?
See, okay, we black people, people of color, we don't have to say what that unequal playing field is. We feel it, we detect it, we see it, we know it. So to answer that part of the question, the list would be too long.
I can give you an answer.
You know,
like I said before, access to opportunity. We're not asking to be given money, given gigs or whatever. No. Give me an opportunity, and don't hamstring me as I try to compete with the next person. Now, here's a funny thing. Equality, and I saw this on social media somewhere, where they said it's not like pie that, when, somebody has, half the pie, then you have less. It's not, it doesn't work that way. When I achieve equality, it doesn't mean that your life is diminished. If anything, your life is going to be better because we all now are producing, and enjoying the fruits of our labor at an equal rate. There's going to be peace between all of us. There's
right? So
more,
much
you know what I
happens.
mean?
Yeah, so much. It becomes a beautiful world. I know I'm starting to sound cheesy, but it does become a beautiful world. There's no animosity when you look at someone you perceive as your enemy.
Sure.
And a lot of times, this person that you perceive as your enemy, in reality, is your enemy. So it's deep, man. You just want the beauty of you just want yours. We need to stop talking about the 40 acres. The 40 acres and the mule. That's romanticizing our needs and our wants. And I don't want to sound like a victim. It's what I see with my own eyes, what I've lived through. And I'm originally from Mississippi. So we all know the history of that place. So it's like, down in the Delta, you see how people live down there. All through the South, it comes up to the North. It's all an extension of an institution.
That will take generations to repair.
Yeah, but we, in our lifetime, we can be happy seeing a start.
There's a lot we can do.
Right.
I mean, this is a great start where we're actually airing our ideas and thoughts and feelings on things.
Right. If you guys were black, you guys would be called tokens. Because y'all are concerned and y'all want to help things. But that's a good thing, though. No, seriously, I'm joking, but I'm not joking.
Right.
You guys are asking questions.
Well, by no means are we looking for validation.
No. We have enough experience. We know that. You're not
Right.
looking for that. We are. I can say that we know from our own experience. You're not looking for that because we can detect that BS.
Because what happens is there inevitably becomes a situation where when people are BSing you on that level, which we're talking about another situation, there's always something that happens that exposes this person.
Right.
And I've had this happen. So everything is great. I love black people. I love black culture. I love everything about you. I got an all black band. I love this. When recently I saw a lot of white musicians who were doing these PSAs about how black culture, all my heroes are black.
Right.
And that's cool. But once again, I look at the makeup of your band. Well, who's in your band? What business opportunities are you sharing with people? Because you can hire anybody. But where am I putting you? And I think that the true equality is not worrying about, as you said, the whole pot. You know, to oppressors, equality feels like oppression. You're taking something from me because I've always been on top. That's what, you know, a typical answer these days is, you know, even in the thread I was talking about on social media earlier, I'm so sick of this racist talk.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's how if you guys would just stop talking about it, it would go away. Well, we're sick of racism.
Right.
Racism is a problem that white people have, that black people have to have a strategy for. Every black person has to have a strategy for dealing with white society. You don't have to have a strategy for dealing with black people if you deal with us by choice.
I always come back to opportunity.
Yep.
I always come back to that because I firmly believe that it is the foundation of racism. I think that if there was nothing to be benefited, then there would be no reason for racism.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if how I don't even have a good analogy, but basically what I ask for as an individual, allow me to use the gifts that I have the way that I want to make my life happy and to look after my family. That's what I'm looking for without interruption. That's all I'm looking for.
Right.
You know, don't prevent me or don't hamstring me or handicap me from doing what I need to do. Again, I have no interest in taking anything from anybody. I just want to be allowed the opportunity. And again, and I'm not even saying it right, because it's not so much that I want to be allowed, because it's my right.
Right.
So it's not so much that I'm asking for permission as much as I'm saying,
Need
Acknowledge
a
the
space to do this.
just
what
get
did
out of
James
the way
Brown
so I
say?
can.
Like what James Brown said, you know, I'm not asking you for nothing. Just open up the door and I'll get it for myself. So it's like, give me the same access to
Right.
walk in that door.
Right.
And then that's all you got to do. Because
So-
you put a block in front of it. Take that block away.
I value work. I value innovation, and like I was saying earlier, all of us want the same things.
Mm-hmm.
We want our families to be safe. We want them to have food. We want them to have shelter, and we want them to if we have kids, we want them to have more opportunities than we had.
Mm-hmm.
And until such time that we can confidently be able to say that our kids have the same opportunity as each other's kids, then there'll always be that undercurrent of tension that exists because of the lack of fairness with life in general.
Right. Well, I think do we all agree that we feel like society is trending towards the light? Like, I mean, you said your father was born in 1914, and his struggles compared to your struggles are kind of night and day, right?
Sure.
But
But not really.
But we've also seen like an influx of white supremacist tiki torch holding
Right. Yeah, it's a
idiots,
thing.
right?
It's a
And
thing.
I've seen more of that now. Is that because the internet is more, there's more people with cell phones, and it's more access to it?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
But I think
I don't think so.
it's always been. These folks ain't new.
Listen,
Right.
I think that we are dealing with a problem that we've never faced and dealt with. And we're still not really facing and dealing. It's festered, and it never went away.
No.
It never went away, and
It's like a cyst.
it's like a cyst. Until you get in there, dig it out, it's
Get
going to
that
be
sack
there.
out.
In fact,
Yeah.
it's going to get worse if you don't deal with it. And so ultimately, again, my reason for agreeing to come in and be part of this was because I see this as a forward movement in that direction.
Right.
I see it as an opportunity to not only express myself, but also to hear these gentlemen express themselves, and to also hear your perspective. And trust me, when I leave from here, there's a lot that I have to think about based on what everybody at the table has had to say. Now, coming back to the base, I started writing for Bass Musician magazine, and now No Trouble for those publications, primarily because I saw that there was an inequity of spotlight on deserving players. So I saw it as an opportunity to be able to focus a spotlight on players that are deserving, that will never likely get that spotlight. And now, if you look at all the people I've written about, you'll see them. They're all over the place in terms of race and origin. However, they share the same basic issue. For some reason, they don't fit the criteria of the publications with respect to whatever merits are deemed desirable to feature them. So for me, it's been kind of a labor of love in a way to try and do that. And it's also another way to make sure that also, because there's also a raise, I don't know how to put it, but there is a lack of access and opportunity in many cases in some of these publications that I see. Now, that's my perspective, and so again, it's my way of trying to help to level the playing field.
Sure.
Instead of just complaining and doing nothing.
Right.
Guys, thank you.
Yes,
so much.
thanks so much for being here. Do you guys have anything you want to promote, or if
Yes.
people want to get in touch with
I
you? Will, if people want to talk to you or book you or
So primarily willgroove2.com is my website.
nice.
WILLGROOVE2.com. I have some music. I've been released since the pandemic has started. I've always done music production, but I've actually released a bunch of stuff as an artist, and that is at willhoward.bandcamp.com/whatever.
Right.
Just go to that.
We'll
Just
find it.
Will Howard.
I'll put a little thing up on there. And I'll link it all up.
I actually just released the song last week, so
Wow.
a bunch of little
Dope
tasty
as hell.
bass stuff, little bassy, stuffy stuff.
It's a nice Sunday drive. The music.
Yeah, and then
It's good.
wait till you hear the next one, which is totally different. It's
I feel like
crazy
it's important to mention Chicago bass players Facebook page. It seems like such a wealth of knowledge and sometimes dumpster fire, but like definitely
Yeah, I
like
like
a
that.
great.
I actually like that.
I like it.
I like it.
I like to rekindle the fire.
Instigator.
My vibe with as the moderator, I guess the person who started the page or whatever. What I wanted to do was create a community where we could be open. One of the reasons it's a closed group is because I wanted people to be able to be open about things that are happening that we all have in common. And we're talking about commonalities. That's what it is. You have to be from Chicago. You have to play the bass.
Yeah.
You can. Some people can't handle it because sometimes there's a little bit too much truth because we don't all have to agree.
Right.
And I try not, because I'm done good with this. I'm not cussing like I usually do in real life. but it's like we try to have a dialogue because there's certain things that we should just be able to talk about.
Sure.
And we avoid politics unless it's related to what we do as musicians. But that's because Facebook is full of places to go talk about politics.
Right.
Because if you're a friend of mine on my personal page, you know that's all I talk about.
Right.
So it's about building community, sharing opportunities, sharing information, and pulling in some players that I don't know about. Like I want to get more young people. I want to get younger cats.
Yeah.
I want to get cats on different scenes.
Right.
Because that's the thing about Chicago.
Women.
Say that again.
We need
Yes.
the women's.
Yes.
But
And trans and non-binary, etc.
okay, yeah,
Absolutely.
we do. No,
Everybody.
because
Seriously.
because that's the thing. It's for everybody, and that's the thing that like lately has been on my mind. Is like I got to do more outreach to do that. And I think it's interesting because it's a page that was started and moderated by a black person. You would not believe how many people I've had who are surprised by that. Because for a long time, I would never say that I was the moderator. I still kind of don't.
Right.
I still kind of don't. Like, I'll pop in, every once in a while when I got to do, like, moderator stuff.
Yeah, I see posts like this is what this thing is about. This
Right.
Is,
Yeah, but typically, I try to not let that be known for a long time. I didn't, or I tried to put it on him. I'm like, no, I'm just moderator. Because he's like, no, if you made me moderator, I'd kick everybody out. No, but it's one of those things where it's an example of where you have to kind of do a little stealth.
Right.
Let me, because I want it to be inclusive, and I know that the minute that some people think that some people are running stuff, oh, well, it's just for these people, or it's just for that people, and that ain't the thing. So,
right.
But
come
wait,
to the page.
who's making those assumptions? What type of person? Demographic?
I mean, I've never. Okay, let's just put it this way: I've never gotten a DM from a black person who says, "I think it's wonderful how diverse this is." So,
are we talking middle-aged white guys?
yeah,
They need to have their internet privileges
we
taken
get.
away.
Well, we used to before we were a certain age, we used to have a running joke about that you can't, like, if you're over 50, your brain cannot handle the internet until I was over 50, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna keep pushing this age up. But it is like there's a whole group of people where they can. Like, I keep going back to the social media post I made that I was involved in. That's who's losing their minds. How dare you? A black guy wants to shop with black people?
Over that, like, what fucking purpose does that do you as a human? Like, how does that enrich your life at all? To be
Mark, this is about music, Mark. Music has no color, although I play with a bunch of white people. And I only buy white products from white companies.
Here I am getting outraged by that.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me.
Are you back?
Yeah, can you edit it out when I left out? Can you edit that where it didn't look like I left out the room?
I can do anything. Yeah.
No, the reason I asked because
We
haven't
had
been
very
here?
good
We can edit out
conversation.
you in general.
You're not even here.
I don't
was
want
about to say-
because I
The
gotta
mic has
go.
been
No,
off
because I gotta go.
Yeah.
But you can edit it out where
Yeah.
I'm not in that
He's
part
got
where he was talking.
computers.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But he'll leave this part in though.
oh no,
Right.
I do. I have to go. But can I walk myself out?
Well,
You
here,
guys
we're
got-
wrapping up.
Yeah.
Vuyani, you got anything you
Okay.
want people to go to? A website?
My website is vuyani.com. VUYANI. That's V as in Victor. UYANI.com.
And you're doing the No Trouble stuff too, right?
Yeah, I'm new at No Trouble, so I have not. I'm working on a big piece for them right now, and I'm also I've got some things that I'm doing for bass musician as well, it's one happy family, But,
one other thing before I forget.
Sure.
A shout out, Sire.
Yes, we
Basis.
gave away a Sire bass recently.
We are shouting out
Thank
Sire.
Thank you again
Bases.
for putting us in touch with Kyle.
I'm shouting out SIT Strings, Gensler Amplification. I get cases. Oh, Essential Sound Products. And somebody else I'm shouting.
Put all those links in there. You
Right.
You want to send anybody to anything, Jauqo?
No,
Jauqo has a new bass.
no.
Yeah.
Jauqo's got his Clover. We'll do a video.
Yeah, he's
on
gonna do
that.
something on that, but no, I don't. No, not
All
right now.
Well, I mean, we've mentioned stuff in the previous
yeah,
episodes.
yeah.
Well, listen, thanks guys so much. I really appreciate it. We're in our new studio here.
It's
in case
nice.
You
Congrats.
didn't notice. It's
Congrats.
still a work in progress, but it's
Yes.
coming together, and we're really excited about it. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, all those things. The Bass Nerds, blah blah blah. Thanks, Mark, as always, and we'll see you on the. I took all the fire.
to God.
No, but that's
I took
you.
all the
You
fire
always
here.
do that. You say a lot of stupid shit.
I take all the fire. here.
I'm out of here, guys.
All right,
Yeah.
see you
Do
later.
have to let
Goodbye.
myself
Thank you.
out?
Thank you. Thank you.
Is it a lock on it? Okay.
You can let yourself out.